Good morning, everybody. We're going to start shortly.
And we can begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Kenya McDuffie, council member for Ward 5 and chair of the council's Committee on Business and Economic Development. Today's Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, and we are convening this hearing virtually via Zoom. We're also live streaming at www.kenyamcduffie.ward5.com/live. The time is 12:10 p.m. and I'm calling this public hearing to order. Today, the committee will consider the following measures: proposed resolution 24-555, the Lee Montessori Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2022, Bill 24-453, the Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc. Tax Abatement Act of 2021, Bill 24-579, the 955th Street Northeast and 2327 through 2341 Skyline Terrace Southeast DC Habitat Real Property Tax Exemption Extension of 2021, Bill 24-452, the Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act of 2021, Bill 24-466, the St. Elizabeth's East Parcel 13 Surplus Declaration and Disposition Approval Act of 2021. As a reminder, all public witnesses will each have 3 minutes to provide oral testimony and should remember to mute their microphones when they're not speaking. The Lee Montessori Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution of 2022 is our first measure. It was introduced on January 21st, 2022 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor and was referred to the committee on February 1st, 2022. The committee held a public roundtable on the measure on January 24th, 2022. If approved, this measure would, hold on one second. We've got only one witness for a public witness today. And before we turn to that public witness, I want to recognize that we are joined by committee member and Ward 7 council member Vincent Gray. Good morning, council member Gray. I want to turn to you and see if you have an opening statement before we turn to our public witnesses.
Member McDuffie, I appreciate this. Thank you very much for calling today's hearing on a number of bills that we are.
I don't think your volume is up. You may be muted.
It doesn't. It does. I can make the volume a little bit better, okay?
Yeah, you actually aren't muted, but we can't hear you.
Okay. Is that any better?
Oh.
We're working on it, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, no, I can hear you now, Mr. Chairman. That may have been on my end. My apologies.
Okay. Let me start over again, if that's okay. I want to thank you very much for convening today's hearing on several bills, including 2 that I introduced. The bill 24-5042, the Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act of 2021, and Bill 5043, the Affordable Housing Opportunities Incorporated Tax Abatement Act of 2021. Bill 5042 would provide a real property tax abatement capped at 5,000, excuse me, 5, excuse me. Hold on, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Okay, capped at $500,000 essentially for the first year, and escalated by 3% annually to lots 85 and 84, 840 in square 5539 for a term of 40 years with CBE and affordability requirements. This tax abatement is for a residential development adjacent to the shops at Penn Branch in Ward 7. The development is intended to help diversify the housing stock in Ward 7 by providing workforce housing. Bill 50, excuse me, Bill 2224-5043 would provide tax exempt and forgive property recordation and transfer taxes for property owned by Benning Healthcare LLC and Benning Programs LLC, and are affordable through affordable housing opportunities. This is for the portions for the Ward 7 to enable some to continue to rent to health services space to continue and rent care to operate the center for employment training, Mr. Chairman. I welcome today's witnesses and to look forward to the dialogue that we may engage in. So that being said, Mr. Chairman, turn it back to you.
Thank you for that statement, Mr. Gray. We're going to turn to the one public witness who signed up to testify for the Lee Montessori Public Charter School Revenue Bonds Project Approval Resolution, and that witness is Chris Pensakowski, who is a co-founder and executive director for Lee Montessori. Good morning, good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready. You have 3 minutes to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Gray, colleagues. Again, my name is Chris Pensakowski. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Lee Montessori Public Charter Schools. And I'm here today in connection with our request that the District of Columbia approve the issuance of $25 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds on behalf of Lee Montessori. Lee Montessori was founded in 2012 and opened our first school in 2014 to challenge inequity and to close the opportunity gaps in the district. We currently operate 2 campuses and serve over 435 students in grades pre-K 3 through 6th. We operate 2 of only 6 public Montessori schools in the District of Columbia. Our Brooklyn campus in Ward 5 is the only public school in DC that fully meets the rigorous standards required by the Association Montessori International for the United States. Our East End campus, which opened in 2019, is the only full Montessori school, public or private, east of the Anacostia River. We're really excited about this project and its ability to provide long-term benefits to the communities we serve. This includes significant job creation, including construction jobs created through the expansion of our building, as well as long-term jobs at our school as we grow from 30 employees that we have today to over 60 by the time we fully enroll our East End campus. Now, I'm not an expert in economic development. I'm here because we offer a high-quality public education to children in Washington, D.C. But the existing research suggests that earlier learning initiatives provide benefits to society of around $8.60 for every dollar spent, about half of which come from increased earnings for children when they grow up. We're going to use these tax-exempt bonds for the acquisition and expansion of our East End campus located at 2345 R Street, adding approximately 17,000 square feet to the existing 25,000 square foot building. We also plan on some of the funds supporting renovations at our Brooklyn campus located at 3025 4th Street Northeast in Ward 5. Combined, we're confident that this work will provide positive long-term benefits to the children we serve, their families, our amazing staff, and more for generations to come. In sum, Lee Montessori respectfully requests that the district approve the issuance of up to $25 million in tax-exempt revenue bonds on its behalf. The bonds, of course, would not constitute a debt or liability for the district, and the bonds would be repaid solely by Lee Montessori. Thank you for your time and attention. Happy to answer any questions.
And thank you for your testimony. I do have just a couple of questions for you before we turn to our government witness. Has your team engaged with the community at all about this project? And if so, what have you heard from any ANC commissioners, any civic association leadership, or any residents about the project that you're planning? That would be supported.
Absolutely. We have presented this to the ANC. We've gotten a letter of support from our single member district for our commission. We've also been, for the past few months, holding virtual community meetings. We did have one in person, which was fun, just before Delta really started to hit. During the meetings, neighbors and community members have asked a lot of questions and brought their concerns to light. We have already responded to some of these concerns and are committed to continuing to meet with neighbors to ensure that we're aware and responsive. We're planning on doing these community meetings monthly, and we've done things, like when we purchased the building in November. So prior to that, we were renting and made sure that, there was a concern about the grass being too long, so we cut the grass. There was a concern about a dead tree on the property, so we took that tree down.
Can I ask you about the ANC? You indicated that you have support from the advisory neighborhood commissioner who has a single member district within which this falls. Which ANC is that specifically? And do you have that? Have you provided that to the or is your representative, someone provided that to the committee for the record?
I believe that was the letter from we didn't get the letter from Commissioner Thompson from ANC. Oh boy, I apologize. I'm going to. But we submitted the letter from Commissioner Thompson following the initial submission of our application. So
okay. All right, and perhaps I haven't seen it, but maybe it's in the materials. I just maybe overlooked it. It might be useful if you could provide it again, just so that we have it and we can incorporate it into the record of the hearing. When you may have already mentioned this, when do you plan on closing on the financing if this is approved?
We're hoping to close sometime in April is our current plan, so pretty aggressive timeline. Yeah. Okay.
And have you identified who you'll use as general contractor for the construction project?
Yes, sir. We're partnering with Gilbane construction companies.
Okay. And do you know if they have plans to engage with any certified business enterprises located in the District of Columbia?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, we haven't finalized those contracts yet, so I know we're still in discussions with Gilbane about that. I'll say our initial target was exceeding 30%. I think it was 35% if I remember correctly, but I can get you the formal number of that. But that's a number that we have not finalized. Like I said, we haven't signed a guaranteed maximum price with the contractor. We haven't formalized that, all of those details.
Okay. And in terms of hiring locally, have you all had occasion to discuss that with Gilbane yet?
Well, so Gilbane is a company that's worked extensively in the district. They're actually just finishing up a similar project with DC Bilingual, another public charter school in the district. And so we're looking to make sure that they have consistent arrangements or consistent follow through on hiring locally, something we're really committed to. The number, I apologize, is I can, again, those are numbers that we haven't formalized, but I can get those those two.
I'm obviously familiar with Gibb Bank. I just want to make sure that emphasis is also coming from you all, given it sounds like that this is a priority for the school, and hopefully, what I know about Lee Montessori is equity is important to the things that you all do, and that be shared with the construction company so that it permeates all the way down to the community and to what they're doing in terms of engaging certified business enterprises, as well as hiring local DC residents, especially if those residents exist and are qualified and have capacity within the community where the project is taking place, that you all are prioritizing that sort of engagement. Who are you all using to provide bond issuance and repayment guarantee or other form of credit enhancement tied to this proposed bond issuance?
We're partnering with RBC.
RBC? Okay. I do not have any other questions. I'll ask to see if Councilmember Gray has any questions of the witness.
Hang on just 1 second. I think I'm unmuted now.
You are.
Okay, good. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I don't really have any additional questions for Mr. Pensikowski, and I can congratulate him on the work that's being done for our students, our young students, and we'll look forward to them doing the work that we need done here in the District of Columbia. And I wish you nothing but the best, and we'll look forward to coming to see the services. Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Let me just really quickly, Mr. Pensikowski, who are you all using as borrowers counsel on this?
We are using McGuire Woods.
McGuire Woods.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you know which attorney at McGuire Woods is handling this for you?
Alan's son.
Alan's son. Okay. All right. I asked because I always ask that question of people who appear before the committee, and I'll also ask it of DEMPED because I try to encourage people to engage minority CBE firms if they exist, if not, minorities and women within the firms that handle these types of issuances. So thank you for that. All right, I'm going to turn next to our government witness for this measure, and I believe that's Stanley Jackson, project manager for the Deputy Mayor of Planning and Economic Development. And good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. I'm Stanley Jackson, a project manager here with the Revenue Bond Program. It's a function within the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Today, I'm here testifying the request on behalf of Lee Montessori Public Charter School that the council approve the issuance of the District of Columbia's Revenue Bond approval project for $25 million. The Lee Montessori Public Charter School has requested that the district issue up to $25 million in revenue bonds in one or more series for the financing, refinancing, reimbursing to the cost associated with the borrower's project located at 2345 R Street Southeast, along with the associated property at 2403 Naylor Road Southeast. The bonds, if issued, will be secured by general obligation of Lee Montessori Public Charter School and will not be with any recourse to the District of Columbia. Based upon the information set forth in the application, the Revenue Bond Program staff has determined that this project does comply with the criteria for approval of a proposed financing transaction through the Revenue Bond Program. Additionally, the proposed project will promote education, trade, and commerce, enhance employment opportunities, and contribute to community betterment. This here concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have for us.
And thank you for your testimony, Mr. Jackson, and good morning or good afternoon to Mr. Liggins as well. I think that I heard from the public witness who testified about this measure, but I obviously want to ask you as a government representative some similar questions. So at the risk of being redundant, what's the proposed timeline to complete the project as you understand it, Mr. Jackson?
we just understand that they're going to look to close the deal in April. Their timing, as far as construction, will be determined after that point. But I'm sure Mr. Pensikowski can give you a better idea of when the project's going to be done.
Okay. But in terms of the council's review of this matter, is there any time sensitivities that the committee should be mindful of as we consider this measure?
If we could get it on the agenda for a March legislative hearing, that would be great. Then they would have even the beginning of April to close it. I know they wanted to close it in April, if that's possible.
Okay. This is obviously answered, but this is an important question that we need to ask to have on the record. Would the debt associated with these bonds constitute a liability at all to the District of Columbia, Mr. Jackson?
No, sir. No.
Okay. And has your office determined that the borrower is qualified applicant in accordance with Section 490 of the Home Rule Act?
Yes, we've reviewed the application. We've had all our agencies review the application as well, so everybody is on board.
Okay. And has your office determined that these bonds are going to be used to finance a project that is authorized to receive financing through the District of Columbia?
Yes, we have went through that. Our OAG and bond counsel have all been on the same team.
Okay, and just you've had a review and you understand that the borrower is able to service the debt resulting from the proposed financing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and who did DIMPED use as bond counsel on this project?
We have ORC, Darren Glenn over at ORC.
Okay, I am familiar with Mr. Glenn. I appreciate that. Let me make a note. Okay, I don't have any additional questions at the moment. If we have anything further, we will reach out to your office. I'm going to turn now to Councilmember Gray to see if he has any questions for the government.
I don't, Mr. Chairman, and we'll look forward to following up with you as well as this project moves forward. It's an exciting project as I look at it, and I will look forward to there being additional questions about the project as it unfolds. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. The next item on the committee's agenda is Bill 24-453, the Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc. Tax Abatement Act of 2021, which was introduced on October 18th, 2021 by Council members Silverman, Bonds, Pinto, Gray, and Robert White. The measure was then referred to the committee on November 2nd, 2021. If approved, actually, let me see. I'm going to turn to our first witness. For this is going to be our public witness. Maslinski is the last name of the senior advisor with So Others Might Eat. And we're going to give the committee staff an opportunity to promote to a panelist. And good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairperson McDuffie, Councilmember Gray, members of the staff. My name is Nechama Maslinski. I work for Some So Others Might Eat, and my title is Senior Some Advisor. Some is a 51-year-old nonprofit organization that provides comprehensive social services from emergency food to permanent housing to district residents who lack homes or are at risk of homelessness. Thank you for holding this hearing on B24-453, the Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc. Tax Abatement Act of 2021. From 2016 to 2018, Some developed from the ground up a 320,000 square foot site in the 4400 block of Benning Road Northeast in Ward 7 named for the Conways as the Conway Center. It opened in 2018 and provides permanent housing for formerly homeless families and singles, employment training, physical health services, behavioral health services, and administrative offices. The center serves residents from anywhere in the district, but its staff invites neighbors in Ward 7 to come in for services. In 2015, some through Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc., or AHO, applied for and received from OTR tax exemptions for the entire Conway Center premises encompassing all of its operations. AHO is a District of Columbia non-stock, not-for-profit 501c3 controlled by SUM Inc. Subsequently, in 2015, SUM formed Benning Programs LLC and Benning Healthcare LLCs to receive the proceeds from new market tax credits administered by the Department of the Treasury and a leverage loan from SUM Inc., and to be the record title holders of the portions of the center within which their programs operate respectively. If it had not been necessary to have an LC be the applicant for the tax credits, SUM would not have needed to form the two LLCs. AHO has a 100% interest in the two LLCs. Once the two LLCs were formed, SUM through AHO immediately reapplied to OTR for tax exemptions for those LLCs, which operate in the same space, providing identical services as before, and controlled by the same entity for which the previous application for tax exemption was acted upon favorably by OTR. The applications remained pending for 5 years with no indication that they would not be acted upon favorably by OTR, having had no changes in control and no interruption in the operations or charitable services provided by SUM for vulnerable DC residents. However, in November 2020, OTR denied the applications on the ground that LLCs are technically for-profit entities. OTR's letter demanded current and back taxes dating back to 2015, along with recordation taxes and penalties and interest dating back to 2015. SUM cannot pay the real property taxes, transfer fees, deed recordation taxes, penalties, and fees that OTR insisted upon without eliminating the healthcare, job training, and substance recovery housing program at the site. The legislation before this committee would provide a tax exemption in keeping with the nonprofit status, services, and mission of SUM, which has 100% control of Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc. The legislation was developed in close consultation with OTR staff, including Basil Ficina. We also acknowledge with appreciation the time and expertise of Nancy Fox and her staff at OCFR. We acknowledge with sincere gratitude the able assistance of Terrence Norflis, Legislative Director for Councilmember Gray, and the support of Councilmember Gray. Thank you for holding this hearing. I'm happy to answer any questions, including regarding the TAFA and Lot 2005. Thank you again.
And thank you for your testimony. I do have just a few questions for you. I guess the first one, just do you agree with the OCFO's TAFA analysis was measured?
Thank you very much. We agree with it, except for the portion relating to Lot 2005. It's an interesting scenario. Lot 2005 is wholly owned by Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc. It's wholly owned by a 501c3 nonprofit. And it is being used solely to provide behavioral health services, particularly for people walking in from the street who are neighbors of Ward 7. It's a small space, just off Benning Road. And originally we were hoping that we would be really as comprehensive as possible and offer a coffee shop there to serve the community, which asked us to provide some community benefits, and we wanted to, and to provide jobs for people in the neighborhood or living in our housing. But we were not able to find a vendor who would be willing to work with such a small space. It would not be profitable for them. So we turned this space into behavioral health services, which provide mental health services and substance use disorder treatment right there at the site. I've only been there once or twice. It's really 2, maybe 3 small offices and a tiny vestibule or waiting area. And the staff, the income for that service is Medicaid and some DBH, substance use disorder funds. It does not, those sources do not pay, do not reimburse some or AHO completely for the expenses for operating that space. We have qualified social workers, we have supervisors for them, we have the utilities, we have computers, we have IT, we have maintenance, and we have security.
I'll ask, I'll be sure to ask the CFO about that aspect of their analysis. When did you mention in your testimony when you all actually applied for this abatement?
2015.
Okay, I did hear that correctly. And so you all, what actually transpired in the 5 years before you got a response from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer?
We had zero indication in those 5 years that that there would be. We applied in 2015 for a tax abatement for the entire site and received it. Then we needed another financial chunk to get some pieces done, and that would be paid for by new market tax credits and a loan. To get the tax credits, we had to form the LLCs. We applied for the tax exemption for the LLCs in 2005 again, and heard nothing for 5 years. So we had no heads up that there would be funds needed for us to pay any taxes. We did not plan against the taxes in our financial planning or in our fundraising. So we were caught short and surprised. And we've been negotiating with OTR, and we even took the matter to legislation, and the legislation to litigation, and the litigation is on hold in the hopes that we can resolve this matter through legislation and that it be resolved completely.
Okay. And Ms. Gray, we're having problems with our clock, Mr. Gray, so I'm going to give myself just we're doing 7-minute rounds. My staff is keeping me on track with that, just in case you're wondering. So I have a couple more minutes left. Does the council approval of this measure impact the 10-month new market tax credit timeline? I think you mentioned that in your testimony.
I don't think it changes the 10 months at all.
Okay.
But maybe I did mention in my written testimony, which would have put me over 3 minutes, that the new market tax credit period expires 10 months about from now.
Right.
And at that time, the title ownership of each of the LLCs will pass either to Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc., which is a 501c3 directly, to Some Inc., which of course is a 501c3, or to another entity, if there is one, controlled by Some that continues to provide services pursuant to Some's charitable mission.
Right. And so just to be clear, I think you mentioned this already, but the LLC was required for the application for new market tax credits, which is a federal program. And I want to ask the LCFO about that and whether they believe there's anything specific in our DC code that we might be able to change or tweak in order for nonprofits not to have to create LLCs for the purpose of the new market tax credit benefit in the District of Columbia. I don't know if you have a comment to that, but I certainly want to ask the LCFO about that when they
At one point, thank you very much. At one point, we were trying to have a global or more universal bill that would accommodate other situations such as ours. I don't believe there is one before the council at this time. We would certainly be happy to support it. And I believe that our colleagues in the affordable housing world would also be very happy about that. Thank you for mentioning it.
And I've seen this with other measures that have come before the committee. And so, and I'll not just yet, Ms. Fox, but once you have an opportunity to provide your written testimony, then I'll have some questions for you. But just so it's clear, you talked about this already with respect to lot 2005, but I want to just ask it so the record is clear. What's the value of an abatement, and can Some bear to absorb this cost absent the relief that you requested?
The total over time for lot 2005 is $242,000. And our position is this: the general public has been very generous to some, and particularly in helping us raise millions of dollars to build and furnish this 320,000 square foot site. We would prefer not to have to raise money from the public in order to pay the taxes on a social service that we're providing.
Got it. Thank
Thank
you for that testimony. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray for a round. If you have any questions.
Chairman, let me get unmuted. Nashama, you worked for some for a very long time. And,
17 years today.
Yeah, 17. It really, you really have done a fantastic job working for some, and I know they mightily appreciate the work that you've done. And Father John is now retired, is that right?
He's president emeritus. He's still
President
around.
Emeritus. Okay, well, he did a fantastic job with some, and I'm one of those who is mightily appreciative of the work that he has done. So I hope you all will be continuing to recognize the work that he has done and keep him involved as much as you possibly can. So thank you for all the work that you've done. I just have a couple questions and then we'll move on. Did you receive enough information to perform a thorough analysis on behalf of some? Nashama?
Do you mean, is the TAFA
Yes.
sufficient?
Yeah.
I believe it is, but we just received it, I believe, on Friday. I don't want to sound as if I'm complaining. I'm just not sure, because the written materials were amplified by in live virtual conversations with Ms. Fox and her staff, and that helped us understand a lot more.
Okay. Why was Benning Healthcare LLC and Benning Programs LLC, why were they created in the first place?
Thank you for the question. They would not have been needed if we hadn't needed additional funding for Conway Center, and new market tax credits were available from the U.S. Department of the Treasury, which we could acquire only if there were LLCs applying for the tax credits. As Councilmember McDuffie said, this is a federal requirement, not a city requirement. So we had to go out of our way to create the LLCs in the first place.
Do you contemplate changing the nonprofit community serving functions that some is performing?
Not at all.
Okay.
No, we're
Not at all.
very happy to be serving the needs of Ward 7 for mental health and substance use disorder.
And we know the needs are substantial, and we are glad that you're doing this. I've been to the new site I was there for the ribbon cutting, and it was a wonderful event, and you all did a fantastic job with that. So
you were there for the groundbreaking too.
Yeah, both. Yeah, let me take credit for both, right?
Yes, you were there.
And I was glad to be able to do that. Why would the community? How would you describe the impact to some and the services that some provides if this tax abatement is not granted? What would happen then? What would happen to you all?
We wouldn't be able to continue to make the ground floor available to Unity Healthcare to provide patient care for 29 patients at a time. We would not be able to maintain the Center for Employment Training on the second floor, which can graduate up to 300 people a year in 3 tracks. And these are folks who may not have been employed before, need help with their GED, need help with life challenges and family challenges and legal challenges. We work with the whole person. we would have to close that, and we would have to close the behavioral health clinic that I've been describing that's on 45th Street.
So those services are essential. What you're doing is essential, being able to continue to provide those services. And if you can talk about a little bit about the behavioral health services, are there opioid services being provided there? How would you describe those?
I want to be cautious. I do not work for the behavioral health services team at some, but there's face-to-face counseling for folks with mental health challenges, as well as substance addiction challenges in their lives right now. We do try to meet the needs of people immediately and to help them stabilize and move forward to self-sufficiency.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you want?
No, go ahead. I wanted to give you a chance to finish.
We're very aware that, we're located in a high crime area. We're right at where Benning Road meets North Capitol.
East Capitol.
East Capitol, sorry
Yeah.
about that. Main Summit is at North. This is East Capitol, right near the Benning Road Metro. And like others, we've been subjected to gunfire and so forth. We really want to be a healthy part of the community, help people who are eager to have their families live in a stable neighborhood. We want to be a part of that process. We think we are. We're housing 170 singles and 30 families, each with individualized services. We have housing for seniors, and we have housing for people who have recovered from substance use disorder. These pieces that I'm describing help fill in the puzzle so that we provide comprehensive services to people from throughout the district, and particularly in Ward 7. Housing is healthcare, and healthcare is healthcare. And we help people move on from crisis into stability and into housing as well. So we would not want to have to close any one of these services, of course. And we really appreciate your questions and your asking and your understanding of the importance of these services.
My last question is, is DBH providing services to your population as well as what some is providing?
I believe not. I believe we're under contract to DBH to provide the services.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Nishama. I appreciate it very much. And thank you for this continued services over the years. 17 years, is that right?
It is today. Thank you. And thank you for your support all these years. And Father John always appreciated when I sent your regards back to him.
Well, please do again if you would. I'd appreciate it. And we love Father John and love everything he has done and continues to do. So thank you, Nishama.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Gray.
And thank you again for your testimony. We're going to turn, thank you, Mr. Gray. We're going to turn next to our government witness. If we could have Nancy Fox, who's already on as a panelist. And good afternoon to you. It is great to see you. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Duffy and members of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. My name is Nancy Fox, and I'm a Senior Policy Analyst for Economic Development Finance in the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. I want to acknowledge my colleagues that are also on the panel, Rick Liu, a colleague of mine in the Office of Finance and Treasury, and Basil Ficina from the Office of Tax and Revenue. I'm pleased to testify on behalf of the OCFO on Bill 24-453, the Affordable Housing Opportunities and Tax Abatement Act of 2021. Call it the bill. The bill will provide retroactive forgiveness and prospective exemptions for real property, deed recordation, and transfer tax for the property for tax and assessment purposes as lots 2003 and 2004 in square 5139. It's otherwise known as the property. Benning Healthcare LLC, which we'll call Healthcare, owns lot 2003, and Benning Programs LLC, which we'll call Programs, owns lot 2004. Healthcare and Programs are controlled by Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc., a not-for-profit housing developer wholly controlled by SUM, Inc. Some not-for-profit entity district residents experiencing poverty and homelessness. I'll refer to these four entities collectively as Applicant. The property is the Conway Center redevelopment located at 4414-4430 Bend Northeast and 7. The Conway Center is built to comprehensively serve community needs by affordable housing, healthcare, and jobbing in this location. The project is structured with distinct components of the real estate development are used in understood entities. Community healthcare
Ms. Fox,
leases 2003 on healthcare services.
Ms. Fox, it might actually be, I think it may be on your end and it's not on our end here at the Wilson Building, but you're coming through fairly distorted. Councilmember Gray, are you hearing her clearly? Or are you also hearing the Were you able to hear her clearly or did it sound distorted?
I was, Mr. Chairman, I was.
Okay. All right, well, let me continue. Maybe it's on our end, but it sounded pretty distorted.
If you want to work on trying to clear it up further, go
Because
right
it's a
ahead.
little
Mr.
choppy on
Chairman.
my end.
What's that, Ms. Fox? Yeah, I
It's
understand.
also been a little choppy on my end.
Okay, you want to give it a shot by turning off your video and just trying audio only and see if that helps?
Sure. Let's let that. See if this is any better. So let me continue. The project was structured so that distinct components of the real estate development are owned, used, and financed under separate entities. Unity Healthcare leases lot 2003 to operate on-site healthcare services. The Center for Employment Training, a program operated by SUM, leases lot 2004 to provide job training programs. Residential elements of the center have been determined to be tax exempt and do not require legislative relief. However, because healthcare and programs are for-profit entities, lots 2003 and 2004 did not meet the requirements for an administrative exemption. The OCFO recommends certain technical changes to the bill to clarify that it covers non-exempt retired lots associated with the Conway Center and thereby provides more comprehensive recordation and transfer tax relief. The applicant has provided those changes in the form of a substitute bill. The substitute bill is attached to my testimony. As part of the substitute bill, the applicant has also included one additional tax lot known as lot 2005 in square 5139, which we'll call the additional property, to be considered for tax relief. The additional property is part of the Conway Center development, is owned by Affordable Housing Opportunities, Inc., and is used by SUM for behavioral healthcare and administrative space. The additional property did not meet the requirements for an administrative tax exemption and was inadvertently omitted from the bill. I'll discuss the findings on the additional property separately as part of my testimony. The OCFO reviewed financial statements provided by the applicant and discussed the Conway Center project with the applicant. Healthcare and programs were structured and financed to operate independently of Affordable Housing Opportunities and SUM. Based on the information reviewed, healthcare and programs have each been operating in a near break-even level with rent revenues received by each entity roughly equivalent to the level of expenses and required debt service. Healthcare and programs would not be able to meet their fiscal needs if required to pay their retroactive and prospective tax liability for lots 2003 and 2004 respectively, and therefore the proposed exemption is financially necessary. For the additional property, the small amount of retroactive and prospective tax liability does not impose a financial hardship on Affordable Housing Opportunities, the owner of the property. Based on the financial statements provided, the tax liability represents a small portion of the annual expenses for SUM, the controlling entity, and the subset of expenses for the affordable housing programs that SUM operates through Affordable Housing Opportunities. The OCFO estimates the value of the abatement and exemptions for the property to be $2.4 million during the financial plan period, which extends through fiscal year 2025, and $12.5 million through 2049. Inclusion of the additional property would increase the value by $46,000 during the financial plan period extending through fiscal year 2025, and $242,000 through 2050. The exemptions will remain in place as long as the property meets the conditions for the abatements and exemptions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Fox. We're going to do a 7-minute round just for staff. I want to make sure we clearly understand the structure, the sort of corporate structure, and who the applicant is. And so I know you mentioned this in your testimony, but I want to, just for folks who are listening and to make sure the record is complete and clear, who's the tax abatement applicant here, Ms. Fox?
Well, it's SUM, which wholly controls Affordable Housing Opportunity, Inc., which controls the 2 LLCs, which are the owners of the lots 2003 and 2004.
And your understanding of the 2 LLCs, which I believe you refer to as healthcare and programs?
Yes.
Okay. And both of those LLCs are wholly controlled by So Others Might Eat?
I would say that is true, yes.
Okay. And the specific ask of the applicant here, as provided for in this bill, is to do what in terms of the abatement?
I'm sorry, the ask of the applicant?
Yes.
The applicant is asking for retroactive and prospective tax relief on lots 2003, 2004, and adding lot 2005 to the proposed legislation.
Got it. Okay. And the value of the abatement and exemptions is how much during the financial plan, 4-year financial plan?
It's about $2.4 million for lots 2003 and 2004. Adding lot 2005 adds $46,000.
Okay.
For the financial plan period, so it's just a little bit more with
Okay.
that addition.
The applicant mentioned that they applied originally in 2015, but hadn't heard anything from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer for 5 years. Can you explain why that is?
I see Basil, my colleague, Mr. Fortuna, popped up. I think he can answer that question for you.
Sure. And if you don't mind, just state your name for the record.
Oh, hi. Yeah, my name is Basil Fashina. I'm an attorney with the Office of Tax and Revenue, and I deal with real property tax exemption matters. And yeah, the Benning Programs and Benning Healthcare applied for an exemption in 2015 when they took ownership of that property. Now, unfortunately, the property was in a very early stage of development at that time. The Conway Center hadn't yet been built. And the construction did take a couple of years to complete. And in general, the exemptions depend upon 2 major factors: exempt ownership and exempt use. And in the situation where a property is being developed and it's not yet in use, it's usually the Office of Tax and Revenue can't make a determination about the qualification of the property until the property has been, the development is well underway, the property is in a condition to be inspected in order to determine what its actual use is going to be. And so that accounted for a large part of the delay in the ultimate resolution of the application. I would say that during that period, there was contact between the Office of Tax and Revenue and the property owners for updates, for supplemental documentation in the nature of building permits, certificates of occupancy for the property. So I think that there was some ongoing communication with us, with the applicant during this period. But obviously, once we were in a position to make a final decision, it turned out that the ownership structure that the applicant used was such that we couldn't grant an administrative exemption. The administrative exemption law is very clear that property has to be owned by a nonprofit organization in order to qualify. And in this case, for NMTC purposes or other reasons, the applicant chose to put the properties into these for-profit LLCs programs and healthcare, and that was a major obstacle to us granting any kind of administrative exemption, and that's why some has found it necessary to seek legislative relief for this property.
So in terms of the structure that you mentioned, thank you for that explanation, Mr. Fashina. Is there a reason why a nonprofit entity that wholly controls a subsidiary can on its own qualify for real property tax abatement, but its for-profit subsidiary cannot?
That's correct. Yeah, the law is very clear that that for-profit ownership is disqualifying, and even if the for-profit is owned by a nonprofit, we can't disregard the separate for-profit entity and grant an exemption based on the ultimate control. We have to look at the actual owner of the property and determine whether that owner meets the requirements of the exemption statute. So yeah, we've run into this problem on other occasions where the nonprofit creates a for-profit subsidiary and this for-profit holds the property, and we are not able to grant them an administrative exemption because of the for-profit status of the actual owner of the property.
And the for-profit status, is that required under district law? Is it required exclusively under some federal law or market tax credits?
Yeah, for the new market tax credit, I'm not an expert on these transactions, but from what I understand is the property needs to be owned by what is called a qualified active low income community business. And that's the term or the standard that's used under federal law. But I understand that these qualic Bs is what they're generally called, can be either for-profit or nonprofit. And in the past, we have seen nonprofit qualic Bs used in these new markets tax credit transactions. But recently, we've seen that that for-profit qualic Bs are being used, and that is a new development from our perspective and something that we haven't really encountered before. So you mentioned earlier, you had a question, is it possible to modify district law in order to accommodate this? And I would say that yes, I mean, it's possible to amend the exemption law to create a new category of exempt owner for these qualic Bs, and provide that as long as they meet the federal requirements and are participating in one of these new market tax credit transactions, the ownership structure, structure of the qualic B wouldn't be an obstacle to an exemption as long as the property is being used for a qualifying exempt purpose. And we're happy to work with you on developing a bill to accomplish that.
Okay. My time has expired on this round. I'm going to need another round. I have a couple more questions. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray for a round.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really only have a couple of questions. I want to thank Nancy and Basil for the work that they've done. I too have worked with them for a number of years on some of these instruments that we've been involved in, and I appreciate the work that they've done and the excellent analyses that they too have provided. So thank you very much, Basil. Thank you so much, Nancy, for the work that you all do. I guess it's a question for both of you. Did you all receive sufficient information to be able to perform a thorough analysis as you do typically have done in the past?
Yes. My office received a sufficient analysis.
Okay. And then the only other question I have is the use of LLCs to obtain new market tax credits funding for other funding. Is that a recurring issue? Is that a concern as it relates to nonprofit organizations, as both of you look at it at this stage?
Yeah, I would say that yes, we've run into a couple of situations where we have these these entities created for the new market tax credit entities, and I think that it would be appropriate to amend the code to address this type of transaction.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the work that both of you have done over the years and continue to do. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. What is, to either of the OCF or representatives who cares to respond, what's the amount of the applicant's current tax arrearages? And when were they initially due? Do you have that information?
So yeah, I can remember you're kind of fading in and out. The maximum ability to owe currently.
Yeah, Ms. Fox, it actually may be you that is having trouble hearing us, because we're also having trouble hearing you. So maybe your connection, actually. I'll tell you what I have if you want to confirm. I have that back taxes owed for years prior to the current fiscal year total approximately $1,355,000. Does that sound accurate?
That's correct. And then an additional $25,000 for Law 2005.
Okay. What is the status of the applicant's operating expenses? Is it currently running a deficit? In your estimation, is the applicant in need of the relief it seeks?
Yes, I don't have the numbers at the top of my head in terms of, the their income and expense statements and their balance sheets. Some is a financially healthy organization. And as you know, we look through this, we look at this financial analysis through an hour lens where we're looking at what the organization can afford. And we look at, for Lot 2005, we're really looking at the organization as a whole. And our analysis, our advisory opinion is that it's an amount that the organization can afford. We recognize Nahama's point that this is money that they've raised, and that it's money that they're getting as a nonprofit that they have to raise in order to do that. But in terms of what, the operation of the organization, paying these additional expenses would not be, in our opinion, a financial hardship. When we look at lots 2003 and 2004, we see them as separate entities that were really designed and financed to pay their expenses off of their revenues, and the revenues, or the expenses did not include taxes. So adding those taxes would put those entities in a financial deficit.
Got it. Thank you for that. If you could share with me the terms that the applicant is required to meet in order to receive the forgiveness that they're seeking here.
I think that those are. Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Nancy. Okay. Well, I would just say that the terms are outlined in the text of the bill. Basically, I don't think that there's the bill that I think has been introduced. Basically, just covers a exemption and forgiveness. But I would think that the property would have to continue to be used for these qualifying social service programs that were described earlier in order to qualify or to receive the exemption. I think that would be an appropriate condition. Now, the applicant, some has proposed some alternative language, which I think would provide a more comprehensive resolution of this matter. And I think, from the Office of Tax and Revenue's perspective, we would like to have this a comprehensive resolution of all of the tax issues relating to this property. And so, I think that the bill, the alternate language that's been offered is I think very, very helpful to achieving that end. And normally, I think that under the substitute bill, the exemption would be basically conditioned on that the property would be continued to be used in the manner that was described in the exemption applications. And that, of course, would include the social service and other types of beneficial public uses that the property is currently being used for.
So just so I'm clear, Ms. Fashina, the alternative bill that you reference does include Lot 2005.
Oh, yes, it does. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Just to be clear, but the TAFA currently says that the relief for Lot 2005 is not necessary.
Well, I think. Oh, please go ahead.
No, please. I want to.
Okay. Well, the TAFA is basically focused on the financial aspect, I think, of, can the organization sustain this financially? And, perhaps it can, but again, it seems like it's a loose end with respect to this project, and the substitute bill would sort of tie up all of the loose ends.
So how would you describe, so if the committee were to modify the measure to reflect what is incorporated in the substitute bill, how would that change the findings of the OCFO or the conclusion that you all would make for the purpose of the council to consider the measure and vote? As you know, when the OCFO says that a tax abatement is not necessary, it's a different vote under the council's rules. So let me just give you that context before you answer that question. If we were to modify the measure to reflect the substitute bill, how would the OCFO determine whether the TAFA is necessary? Or what would the finding be in terms of the tax abatement financial analysis under the substitute bill?
I don't know if that's something that we've really thought about. I mean, we say that the relief for lots 2003 and 2004 is necessary, and that's the lion's share of the fiscal impact. 2005 is, I guess, a fairly small portion of the overall relief. Again, I guess that it's for the council, I suppose, to determine, how its rules apply in a particular situation. So I don't know that we would have a particular view or position on that.
Okay, no, I'm not, let me be clear, I'm not asking you to weigh in on the council's rules. It certainly is our authority to determine what our rules mean and how they apply to our votes. What I guess I want to make sure it's clear is the OCFO's finding, right? The finding that the information that we have in this TAFA analysis with respect to Bill 24-453 as drafted. In Ms. Fox's testimony, she mentions the substitute bill, and you just mentioned it as well. And under that substitute bill, it would incorporate Lot 2005.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to modify the bill to incorporate the provisions in the substitute, which would also include Lot 2005, where you all found that the relief was not necessary, I guess I'm trying to make a determination, not about the council's rules, but about the OCFO's. Would that change your finding if we were to make that modification? Or would you still deem Lot 2005 not, that relief not be necessary for that particular lot under the substitute?
I don't think it would change our findings.
Okay, that's a nice, concise answer, Ms. Fox. I appreciate that. And hopefully it'll be helpful to the members of the committee as we consider this measure. I don't think I have any additional questions about this particular measure. I really appreciate you all's testimony. I had an additional round, Mr. Gray. I don't know if you have any additional questions at this point before we move to the next measure. Councilmember Gray? Okay. Okay. All right, then we're gonna move to the third item on the agenda for this morning, which is going to be the 55th Street Northeast and 2327 through 2341 Skyland Terrace Southeast DC Habitat Real Property Tax Exemption Extension of 2021. That is a mouthful for the title of a measure. It was introduced on December 21st, 2021 by council members Bonds, Henderson, and Che, and was referred to the committee on January 4th, 2022. I'm going to call up our public witness and remind the witness that there'll be 3 minutes to provide oral testimony. And the witness is Susan Slater, who is Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. And we're going to just take a moment to transition the witness. And good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can people hear me?
We can hear you well. We can't see you. I don't know if you wanted us to be able to see you.
I'm
just-
happy to be seen. Hold on. Okay.
Good
Okay.
afternoon. It's good to see you and hear you.
you.
And you can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'm delighted to appear before you, Councilmember McDuffie and Gray. And I want to thank especially the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, who has been working closely with us on this measure. It's a pretty simple measure. We're trying to build 25 homes in Ward 7 and 8. 17 of them are in Ward 7 and in Deanwood, and 8 are in Skyland in Ward 8. And I've been listening to the conversation prior to my coming on, and we are financing these affordable housing projects, 25 affordable homes through new market tax credits. And we just finished 14 homes in Ward 7 in Randall Highlands. And those 14 homes delayed because we're using new market tax credits. It works as though it's a revolving fund. We have to finish one project before we start another. And so because of the pandemic, we literally had to sell the 14 affordable homes ranging from 30% of median family income to about 70% of median family income. We had to sell them, some of them 2 and 3 times over, because people lost their jobs, they became ill, something happened. We got well behind because of COVID. And so our tax exemption on our next 2 projects, Skyland and Greenwood, these 25 homes became delayed. And that's all a function of our financing. So we have now require an extension of our tax exemption so that we can proceed in the construction of Skyland and the construction of the 17 homes in Deanwood. So I want to thank the Office of the Chief Financial Officer so much. They did quite a thorough analysis of our mission with providing affordable housing in the district and the cost of the tax exemption. And altogether, the tax exemption ran out prior to 2021. So we're asking for some relief on prior tax liability. And then it'll take us till 2025 to build all these 25 homes. So the total value to the district is about $79,000. Now, all of our homes that DC Habitat builds are for sale to families in need. We do considerable fundraising. We sell below cost. So this $79,000, although it doesn't sound like a lot of money, is actually a lot of money to us, because just like your prior witness, we don't want to use fundraising monies that we'd like to use to subsidize the cost of the home, to defray the cost, the increased cost per house that the lack of tax exemption would create. So I'm eager to take any of your questions. And again, I'm very honored to be here, and I want to thank your staff quite a bit.
And thank you for your testimony, Ms. Slater. We appreciate it. I do have just a couple of questions before I turn to my colleague, Vincent Gray. The affordability levels for the homes at both sites. Can you just talk a little bit about the affordability levels and the desired target for those homes that you all are building? I think that's important to talk a little bit about.
Okay, our homes average between 50 and 60% of median family income over the last 200 homes. The ones in Skyland, we expect to sell average about 50% of median family income. And the Deanwood property, we're looking to sell to people between 35% and about 70%. We wanted to create a mixed income development there.
Okay, and how many units are at the Deanwood site?
17.
17, okay. And the Skyline site is 8?
8 homes, yes. They will be far more, all of them will be deeply affordable. We will average around 60% at the Deanwood property.
Okay.
We purchased the Skyland property from the District of Columbia for $10,000. And then we bought the Deanwood property on the open market.
So let me ask a question, Ms. Slater. In terms of the application and the structure for the entities, are there for-profit entities that are being used, or is Habitat the only entity in this transaction and the application for new market tax credits?
Okay, the new market tax credit situation is we're in a configuration with Manna and Jubilee Housing.
Okay.
The 3 of us went in and got an allocation, and it's a very complicated structure, but the essence of it is it's the three nonprofits sharing the proceeds of the new market tax credit. So there is not a for-profit entity involved.
Okay. Yeah, I was sort of asking just obviously for the record, but also just sort of contrast to the prior measure that was before us, where an LLC was, where LLCs plural were used. Let me see if I have any other questions at the moment. Tell me about what's going to happen if this abatement is not granted. What does that mean for Habitat and the homes that you all are seeking to build?
Well, it would raise the cost of each home on average about $4,000 to $5,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for the people we serve, it is a lot. So that's the difference between maybe someone's 60% median family income and maybe 58% family median income. So we do everything we possibly can to basically be as efficient as we can with the funds. We raise money from donors across the city, and we don't have any of the subsidies from the Housing Production Trust Fund in this. We don't have any other subsidies that we've requested.
Do you all agree with the Chief Financial Officer's TAF analysis of this measure?
Yes, I thought it was excellent, and they did it in record time too. It was outstanding staff work. It was just terrific. They read all our financials in record time.
Okay, excellent. I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray, see if he has any questions. Thank you again, Ms. Slater, for your testimony.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Slater, for your testimony. I really only have one question. I just really want to make sure I understand. You talked about some of the homes being located in Skyland.
Yes.
Can you be more definitive about where in Skyland the homes are located?
Yes, the addresses are 2327 to 2341 Skyland Terrace.
Okay, and that's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, we built 34 homes there already, and this finishes the Skyland Terrace loop with the final 8 homes.
Is that near Good Hope Road? Is that the area where you locating the homes?
It's a little ways away. It's closer to Skyland place, yes.
Okay, I appreciate it. I really wanted to make sure I fully understood exactly where the homes are located. I think you've given me a sufficient definition so I can fully understand it. So thank you, Ms. Slater. I appreciate it. I'm done, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. And again, thank you, Ms. Slater, for your testimony. We'll turn next to our government witness for this measure. And again, if you want to turn on, well, then again, I think we were going audio only. So Ms. Fox, if you want to share your testimony for the measure that's pending now, we would appreciate it.
Sure. I'll just say hi. Introduce myself again, Nancy Fox, Senior Policy Analyst in the Office of Finance and Treasury, the Office of Chief Financial Officer. I also want to acknowledge my colleague Rick Liu from OFT, who did a lot of the work on this analysis and may be answering some of the questions on it. I'll just read my testimony. If you are having issues with hearing me, then just interrupt me and we'll see. I'll talk a little slower. We'll see what we can do to fix it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. I'm pleased to testify for the OCFO on Bill 24-579. The bill would exempt certain properties in the Skyland and Deanwood neighborhoods from property tax, penalties, and interest from the beginning of calendar year 2021 to the end of calendar year 2024. The project will use this exemption to build 25 new affordable townhomes for low to moderate income families in Ward 7 and 8. Habitat for Humanity DC Nova, DC Habitat we'll call them, it's a nonprofit organization that owns the properties. The properties at 2327 through 2341 Skyland Terrace Southeast. The Skyland properties are known for tax and assessment purposes as lots 241 and 350 through 356 in square 5740. The property located at 955th Street Northeast, which we call the Deanwood property, is known for tax and assessment purposes as lot 22 in square 5204. As Suzanne mentioned, the Skyland properties were purchased from the district in 2016 at a reduced cost in order to deliver 8 affordable for sale townhomes. Per property disposition agreement, these units must be affordable to families earning 60% of the median family income. These properties had a previous tax exemption between 2018 and 2021 to reduce costs during their construction and sale period. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, construction on these units has been delayed, but DC Habitat is now ready to break ground on these units and expects them to be constructed and sold in 18 months. Per the bill, exemptions would be terminated once DC Habitat no longer owns the Skyland properties. The Deanwood property was purchased in 2018 from a private owner. Habitat plans to demolish the single-family house currently on the property and replace it with 17 new for-sale townhomes made affordable for families earning an average of 60% of the median family income, even though it's not a requirement as part of the transaction. Because construction of these units is contingent upon the sale of the 8 units of the Skyland property, development of the 17 units is expected to begin in fiscal year 2023 and be completed and sold in the 3rd quarter of fiscal year 2025. As the viability of the Deanwood properties depends on the proceeds received from the Skyline property, OCFO regards these projects as linked in terms of the financial necessity of the tax exemption. The Deanwood property has an outstanding tax liability from prior to fiscal year 2021 and expects its construction and settlement period to extend beyond the period stated in the bill. DC Habitat has requested that the district consider amending the bill to include forgiveness of all back taxes for 900 55th Street Northeast, as well as extending the exemption period for an additional 6 months to June 31st, 2025, when the final units will be sold. The OCFO examined the impact on DC Habitat if the legislative proposed exemptions are not granted. Based on review of the financial information provided by the OCFO, DC Habitat will build these homes to be sold at prices below development cost, and the funding gap will be filled through fundraising and DC Habitat's internal resources. DC Habitat will not take a developer fee or return on equity from either of these properties. If property tax were assessed on these properties, DC Habitat would need to do one or more of the following. One, increase the price of the 17 townhomes at the Deanwood property to recoup property tax payments. Once proceeds are available, retroactively pay the taxes, penalties, and interest. Two, fundraise to close the gap. Or three, draw from their cash reserves. OCFO's review of DC Habitat's income and expense statements reveals that DC Habitat has been operating at a loss both 2020 and 2021, and the estimated property tax liability would represent a relatively large share of their cash reserves. Given the financial condition of DC Habitat, the OCFO finds it is unlikely that the projects could advance as planned without the bill's proposed tax exemption, nor without the full retroactive exemption and the extended exemption to Habitat. However, because this assumes all housing units be sold at specific affordability levels, the bill should be amended to specify an affordability threshold at an average of 60% of the median family income for the Deanwood property units. The Office of Finance and Treasury of the OCFO calculates the estimated value of the tax exemption as proposed in the bill to be $51,324. Under DC Habitat's requested terms, the value of the exemption would increase to $79,060. A fiscal impact statement will be prepared separately for the bill. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
And thank you for your testimony, Ms. Fox. Again, really thorough and comprehensive testimony. It was a bit distorted, but I wanted to let you go through it because it really, I think, laid out the analysis that you provided in writing in the tax abatement financial analysis. And so I do appreciate that. As a result of your thorough testimony, I don't have as many questions. I do want to sort of focus on the tail end of your testimony where you talk about potentially amending the legislation. You mentioned that the bill does not specify the affordability level for the sale of the 25 townhomes. Can you give me just if you can restate that part to make sure that's clear for the record, because the committee is interested in that aspect of the analysis.
Sure, there's I don't have the bill in front of me, but there's nothing in the bill that kind of has any income restriction on it. And this is just a suggestion. We're basically we're pointing out that the situation could be resolved by the cost of the price of the homes at sale being increased. And I think the intent here is to keep those affordable, and therefore the idea is that you could potentially add some sort of provisions on the affordability to the bill in order to meet that.
Thank you for that. I'm pretty sure that's the intent of Habitat, and it's been my experience working with them as council member on their projects. They've had some projects in Ward 5 and obviously are doing some great work in other parts of the city, including Ward 7 with the homes in Deanwood and Skyland. Could you work with us, your office, work with the committee on that potential language?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray to see if he has any questions for the CFO's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have any questions. I really appreciated some of the information that's already been given about Ms. Slater, and then some of it's been reinforced by by Ms. Fox as well. So I don't have any additional questions, Mr. Chairman. So thank you very much.
Okay, all right. If we do have any additional questions, Ms. Fox or any other team members of the Chief Financial Officer's office, we'll be sure to follow up, and we look forward to working with you as we ponder whether or not we want to amend it as you recommended to clarify the affordability threshold for the homes. Again, thank you for your testimony in this matter. We're going to turn next to, where are we on my agenda? To the fourth item on the agenda, which is Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act. And that measure was introduced on October 18th, 2021 by Council members Gray, Bonds, and Pinto, and was referred to the committee on November 2nd, 2021. The applicant here is Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners, who seeks to develop the site, which is located behind the shops at Penn Branch, a neighborhood commercial center that the applicant recently renovated. Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners is a Washington, D.C. based real estate investment and development company. And I'm going to turn to our panel of public witnesses. And I've got about 8 people who previously signed up with the committee to testify. And so we're going to take just a couple of minutes to transition those public witnesses onto the panel. And just a reminder, as we're transitioning the witnesses, to let each of them know that they will have 3 minutes to provide oral testimony. And if they haven't already provided their testimony in writing to the committee, I would encourage them to do so. I'll note that a number of people already have provided the committee with their written testimony. We appreciate you doing so. So I'm going to go on mute for just a moment as we transition some of the witnesses for this measure. All right. Good afternoon to you all. I know we're still transitioning some public witnesses, but we have at least the first few. And so I want to again welcome you all. Thank you for joining us, and turn first to Sylvester Bush, who's a Penn Branch resident, for your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and Councilman Gray. I'm Sylvester Bush, a resident of the Penn Branch neighborhood, a close-knit community of 500 plus single-family homes where neighbors care and look out for each other. I'm a neighbor of the O Street Neighbors and Friends groups that live within Penn Branch. I am not in favor of the Bill 240452, the Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act of 2021, hereafter called the bill, in its current form. It appears it allows the developer to take the path of least resistance and providing rental units and not consider homes that allow ownership. My concern is that the bill would provide 100% property tax abatement for 40 years. This means that over the period of 40 years, Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners will not pay approximately $20 million in taxes. For 40 years, no taxes. An article in today's Washington Post titled, "Investors Bought a Record Share of Homes in 2021, an analysis of 40 major metro areas revealed unequal levels of investor activity, with southern cities and Black neighborhoods disproportionately affected." When you look at the Washington, D.C. area, 6% of homes purchased in this area last year were bought by investors, fewer than the typical metro area. However, when you do a deep dive, share of homes purchased by investors in zip code 2020 was 23%. Therefore, structuring a tax abatement to include a path to home ownership may mitigate the barriers/impediments that exist to home ownership. In addition to concerns about the tax abatement for Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners, I'm concerned with the following. I believe the area is too dense for such a large project. There's too many units. Number two, missing middle housing was coined by optics design founder Daniel Perlek in 2010 to define a range of multiple unit or cluster housing types compatible in scale with detached single-family homes. According to missingmiddle.com, the majority of missing middle houses types have 48 units in a building or 4 to 8 units on a lot in the case of a cottage court. Most middle building types are 2 to 2.5 stories in height, with the exceptions of the cottage court at 1.5 stories. Upper missing middle housing types typically have 12 units per building with a maximum of 19 units. This building has 188, the proposed building. Number 3, we want housing aimed at households earning up to $120,000 per year, not maxed at $80,000 a year. Number 4, the proposed project is inconsistent with the DC Comprehensive Plan's racial equity goals because it concentrates lower income housing in the Southeast. I am all for affordable housing. Why can't it include a path to home ownership and be done on a parallel track with providing affordable rental housing? If we can give a tax abatement of $20 million for 40 years, we need to figure out how we can use policy to incentivize, encourage, and spur ownership. Thank you for allowing me to share. I'm available for any questions.
And thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. We're going to turn next to Dr. Marla Dean. I see is here. I'll call Laura Richards, but I don't believe that she's been able to join us. So we'll turn to Dr. Dean, and good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman, and good afternoon, Council Member Gray. I am Marla Dean, and I am the chair of the O Street Neighbors and Friends located in the Penn Branch neighborhood. The O Street Neighbors and Friends, an organized group of residents located adjacent to the shops at Penn Branch, is formally requesting that the 171 to 185 unit building that is scheduled to be built in the rear parking lot of the shops at Penn Branch are developed as 171 to 185 units of condominiums. It is a matter of equity and economic justice for Ward 7 residents. Therefore, we stand in opposition to Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act of 2021, introduced by Council Members Gray, Bonds, and Pinto. In the most recent census, the population of white Americans fell below 60%, except in Washington, D.C., which is the only place where the share of the white population increased last year. Washington, D.C. has the fastest pace of displacement of Black people in America. Displacement is not just geographical, but it includes cultural, political, and economic displacement. Moreover, the racial wealth gap in the metropolitan area, the DMV, is 81 to 1. The legislation that Council Members Gray, Bond, and Pinto introduced gives a 100% tax abatement to J.R. Lynch Real Estate Partners for Parcel 2 for the next 40 years, beginning in 2016 and ending in 2067. It is appalling to learn of a 100% tax abatement for this project. Keeping residents locked into renting does absolutely nothing to close the racial wealth gap in DC. This use of extractive economics is unconscionable. In our meeting last night with J.R. Lynch Real Estate Partners, it was indicated that one of the reasons renting made more business sense than developing condominiums is tax policy, and that the capital gains tax is less than earned income tax rates. Tax policy should not operate to exacerbate economic inequities and racial wealth gaps. The DC Council should be on high alert for such policies that create such outcomes. The missing middle, teachers, nurses, police officers, transit workers, DC government employees deserve better than to have to rent all of their lives. They deserve home ownership. They are public servants, and they should have the opportunity to own a home in a city which they work on behalf of its citizens. I am a former teacher. My dream was never to rent, but to buy a home. Each council member is a public servant, and each of you are homeowners. The community wants affordable ownership. The District of Columbia must root her actions in equity, not only politically, but equally as important, economic justice. Black and brown residents are being priced out of the DC home buying market. To address this disparity, I sit on a board of an organization that provides grants to Black folks in order to help them purchase a home. Moreover, Ward 7 has the highest level of public housing.
Dr. Dean, I want to give you a little extra time, but your time has expired. If you want to summarize briefly.
Okay, I'll finish this sentence. Thank you. Ward 7 has the highest level of public housing of any ward in the district, and Ward 7 has the highest levels of affordable rent when compared to other wards. So we champion and support the mayor's effort to bring affordable housing west of Rock Creek Park. However, we want home ownership in our community, and we believe that the DC Council can use tax policy and other policies to create that for the missing middle.
Thank you for your testimony. I want to turn to, we've been joined by Laura Richards, who's also a Penn Branch resident. If you would like to turn on your video and unmute yourself, you can begin your testimony.
My video is not working. All you're going to get is a blur.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll go with the audio. We can hear you clearly.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and members of the committee, with a special greeting to my councilman, Vince Gray. I'm a Penn Branch resident appearing in opposition to the requested tax abatement for the apartments in Penn Branch. I do so because both the number of units and the income mix will further concentrate affordable and deeply affordable housing east of the river, while failing to provide much needed homeownership opportunities. This outcome is contrary to the equity goals contained in the comprehensive plan, which call for dispersing affordable housing throughout the city, and also creating mixed income neighborhoods and building generational wealth in the capital-starved African-American community. The creation of 100% affordable housing has become the default development option for Ward 7. Since 2017, at least 1,173 units have been planned or broken ground or been completed, all of them 100% affordable and aimed at households with income ranging from 30 to 60% of AMI. The Park 7 apartments came online in 2014 with 376 units at 60% AMI. The first tranche of housing at Skyland opened this year, offering rents aimed primarily at households at 80% AMI. In a rare exception, 24 for sale townhouses are under construction in the Twining neighborhood for families with incomes at 50% AMI. The trend is clear. Ward 7 is the go-to location for low and very low rental housing with little or no new construction for prospective home buyers at any income level. The city is building, with substantial subsidies to developers, a self-fulfilling prophecy in which renters whose improved circumstances allow them to buy a house will not be able to find one in Ward 7 because none will have been built. Such households will continue moving to Prince George's County. We are starting down the path forged by Crestwood, Brightwood, and Brookland. To start arresting this trend, the housing at Penn Branch should be a truly mixed income development with a mix of rental and ownership units, with some of each being income restricted. I believe the very extensive financing toolkit at the district's disposal is big enough to develop a model that will accommodate such a project. The financial subsidies needed by the 3-acre Penn Branch site dwarf in comparison to the subsidies given to large tracts like McMillan. Accordingly, I ask you to reject this abatement request and work with the developer on a mixed income project that will include significant home ownership opportunities in Penn Branch. Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you for your testimony this afternoon. We're gonna go next to Mia Jackson. Good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and Councilmember Gray. My name is Mia Michelle Jackson. I'm an entrepreneur committed to growing a thriving business here in a comfortable living space in Washington, D.C. area. I also have a disability that may make that a difficult goal while still attainable. I'm joining you today to express my opinion for the need of a tax abatement for the residences at Penn Branch, which will bring much needed market rate middle income housing to Ward 7. My most recent move to DC in early 2021 happened during the middle of the pandemic. As we all know, the economy was severely impacted, adding to the already difficult task of finding affordable housing, safe and convenient in the district. I had qualified under the inclusionary zoning program. My epilepsy diagnosis makes it critical that I have access to public transportation and services. For a person like me, someone who wants to live independently while managing my disease, the IZ program seemed to be a godsend. But even after qualifying for the program in October 2020, the task of locating an affordable, accessible property was like searching for gold. Email notices of available properties meant little, as there was limited supply and most of them required a lot of replacement. I stayed the course, eventually landing in Tacoma Central, which is in Ward 4, which meets my needs. Now the rent and space are manageable to me, but not cheap. I was surprised that only a handful of options existed in each of the new buildings in the program. We need more units for people like me, and the 180 new units at the Penn Branch will be a great start. I don't know how I'd fare with the family as I had years ago, but I had my complete health. A sudden change in health or unexpected circumstances often require a shift in lifestyle, granted, but finding suitable, affordable accommodations should not be depressing, often demeaning experience. One of my closest friends is a divorced mom of 3 teenagers. One is her freshman year in college. She moved to Maryland and has a long commute to the city for work. 2 other women who lived in my building, older sorority sisters, chose to move out of DC to more affordable housing in Maryland as well. As they are aging and their care costs increase, they knew that soon they wouldn't be able to live comfortably. Also, as friends from around the country consider moves, many write off the city as an option after they quickly survey the housing cost. A range of talent and energy required to keep DC as a thriving city is known to be. And if the pandemic showed us anything, it revealed how much our infrastructure relies on the thankless work of teachers, medical workers, and service professionals who add to the personality of our city. Guaranteed, these people need this project. We can't afford to lose them. I see I'm running low on time, so I'll wrap up. Please approve the 100% property tax abatement for 40 years, beginning with the fiscal year 2026, which begins October 1, 2025 through fiscal year 2067, capped at $500,000 per year. I don't want to move. I chose the city for its fabric and vibrant, diverse communities. That's what's being lost as more and more friends I care about are finding themselves forced to leave. They cannot afford it. I understand the project will not occur without the abatement, and that affects all of us. Thank you for your time.
And thank you for your testimony. We're going to turn next to Jacqueline Canning. Jacqueline
Good afternoon.
Canning is here. Good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairperson McDuffie and Councilmember Gray. Thank you for the opportunity to give my live testimony here today. My name is Jacqueline Cannon, a 24-year resident of Ward 7 in the Penn Branch community. I am testifying today in favor of Bill 24-0452 and the development of lots 835 and 840. However, I oppose the number of units being proposed in this development, and that number is 188. I feel that the number of units is too large for the square footage of lots 835 and 840. Some recommendations that I would consider amenable would be to reduce, number one is to reduce the number of proposed units from 188 to a range of 110 to 150. This recommendation is the low end of the units proposed for this site in the 2008 Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast Small Area Plan, which references a possibility of 150 to 180 units. It is also the high end of the units discussed with the O Street Neighbors and Friends in a 2018 document that projected between 90 and 110 residential units. And number two, currently the proposed development plan of lots 835 and 840 has only one entry and exit points. The reduction of proposed units may allow for a secondary entry and exit point, which will relieve potential congestion and help with the flow of traffic. And number three, the reduction of the number of units may then allow for green space, for a playground for the children, and a small park for the residents. I look forward to seeing this planned development and the new retail options it will potentially bring to our neighborhood. Thank you for your time today, and I am available for questions as well.
And I want to thank each of the public witnesses for testifying. I want to do a round of questions, and I'm going to turn to Councilmember Gray for questions as well. Should I place in my questions? Here we go. So I heard some concerns that were articulated by residents about the type of housing that's being provided at this site. And I heard a preference, I think, at least for a couple of witnesses, to have home ownership versus rental. And I wanted to give a couple of witnesses just an opportunity to expound upon that and provide some context with, I think, some of the concerns that I hear expressed by residents is a lack of housing affordability in the District of Columbia. Conversely, what I'm hearing, at least by a couple of witnesses, is that in building affordable housing in the District of Columbia, there's a suggestion that it is being concentrated in certain parts of the city, including in Ward 7, versus building affordable housing in other parts of the city, perhaps more expensive parts of the city outside of Ward 7 and 8. Am I summarizing that accurately? And I see Dr. Dean shaking your head. You want to respond to that? Is that accurate?
I think there are two threads of concerns. One is that we want home ownership and we want introductory home ownership in our community because home ownership is becoming almost impossible for the missing middle in the city. Then there is also a concern about the concentration of affordable housing in Ward 7, and we feel very much committed to affordable housing, but we feel like it should be a citywide effort and not one that is just concentrated in certain communities. The last thing I also want to clarify is that this project will be built and was scheduled to be built before this tax abatement came on. So I do not think that that's an accurate statement to say that this project will not be built without the tax abatement. So that's so yes, those are the two threads that are of concern in the community.
Is this necessarily though a choice of rental versus ownership? Is there not a proposal with multifamily rental that would be acceptable in your opinion to you or some of the neighbors who have a similar view? Or is it the actual the MFI, the income levels of the multifamily that's being proposed here that is a challenge?
Let me be clear. Since I just ran a nonprofit for the last 5 years to serve children and families experiencing homelessness, I get very concerned when we start talking about who gets to live in a place and who doesn't. So for me and the neighbors of O Street Neighbors and Friends, we have been concentrated on home ownership. We believe that's a path to equity, racial equity, wealth equity, closing those gaps. Others in the community have been concerned about that, but please note that that has been our central point. We want the opportunity for wealth building in our community. We want an entree point for that, so.
Okay. Does anybody else care to comment on that? I do appreciate the reference to home ownership and as somebody who's been a champion for racial equity on the council and looking at specific ways to close the racial wealth gap in the District of Columbia has been a priority for me and for this committee. And knowing what the data say about how important home ownership is to building wealth, business ownership as well. I do want to make sure that I am clear in stating I appreciate the testimony that mentions that. I do want to recognize Ms. Richards, I think it was, who may want to provide, and I also saw Mr. on the way went in my screen, Mr. Bush, I think, Oh, you have your hand up as well. So Laura Richards and then followed by Sylvester Bush.
I think there's a dual concern. Both we want the home ownership. Also, if you concentrate all affordable housing or significant affordable housing in one area, then the business community does not provide the amenities that we would like to see in our neighborhood. Whenever we have asked about this, that, or the other amenity or a certain kind of store or restaurant, we're told, yes, oh, but the neighborhood won't bear it. The income's not right. And then it's the income's not right. And then you've got to have the density. So they're saying, okay, we're going to give you lots of density, but the density will still not support at that income level completely will not support some of the amenities we want. So it becomes, a vicious circle. And the more you start building affordable and deeply affordable housing in one area, the more that becomes the sort of stamp of the neighborhood. And we'll never get what we want, and we'll slowly start to go down, down, and down. We'll end up like some parts of Prince George's County. You can have a nice house if you're in a house, or you can have an affordable apartment, but you have to go someplace else to do anything. So we really need that mix of income. And it's not this project alone. It's this project in comparison, in conjunction with all the others like it.
Right, no, okay. And I want to just ask a follow-up to that, then I'm going to turn to Sylvester Bush before I turn to Councilmember Gray. But I hear that frequently. Every year pre-pandemic, a number of council members would go to the conference, the retail conference in Las Vegas, ICSC, and you hear it all the time. You talk about wanting to bring quality neighborhood serving retail to communities, and I push that really as a Ward 5 council member, also as chair of the Economic Development Committee. And you hear the response is, put a dot on a map, draw a half-mile radius, and look at two things: density and incomes.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned that you need a mix of incomes. Would this not help provide a mix of incomes, or is it that the income levels of the housing, in your opinion, aren't high enough to create the sort of demand in the face of the retail providers that will get you all the type of neighborhood serving retail that you would like?
I think that we need a part of the development to be a higher rate of income. We do need some market rate income there. And it's, again, you cannot do this just at Penn Branch. You have to look at Penn Branch in connection with all of the other construction going on in Ward 7, and more particularly along the Pennsylvania Avenue corridor.
Okay, and then let me turn to Sylvester Bush. I see Jacqueline Cannon had her hand up. I'm going to try to get to, but I am over my time for this round. Sylvester Bush, if you have a quick comment.
I'll be brief. When this project initially started, it was supposed to be for townhomes or condos, and then whatever happened that fell through based on that. And then they came back with the rental units. And I concur with Dr. Dean and Ms. Richards, is that we need to have a path to ownership, and we can do that both at the same time. I mean, I was deeply informed about all the testimonies before this, with all the tax policies, all the tools that are in DC's toolkit. I mean, especially listening to Manna, that they're putting up houses. So again, like Ms. Richards said, is that not only looking at Penn Branch, but the whole Ward 7, and then trying to create a path to ownership. Like I said, if you look at the paper today in Washington Post, there's a very interesting article, 40 major areas across the country. Atlanta's like #1, where investors are coming in. Now, however, DC is overall number in 6%, but if you go online, you can drill down to Washington, DC, and then you can put your cursor on Ward 7. 2019 is 33%. 2020 is 23% where investors are coming. So if you look at those, they're being taken out of the stock market. I mean, out of the housing stock. And so this is more the reason why we need to do this, is to kind of mitigate that. I know Carl Racine has put some laws in place to stop these big investors, because I work on another effort. And then I was finding out up Northwest over Ward 3, they were coming in, buying these buildings, and then they're forcing these people out. So we need a path to ownership. And I think we can do both of those at the same time.
I'll note, because again, I support the path to ownership, and I think it's absolutely important in the District of Columbia, particularly for minorities and Black residents, in particular in the District of Columbia, because we have one of the largest racial wealth gaps of any city in the nation. But I also note you use Manna and Habitat, I think you referenced as examples, and Habitat testified earlier about the homes that they're building in Deanwood and Skyland. I'll note though that those homes are largely all affordable homes. And so the incomes that an individual would need to make in order to qualify aren't necessarily consistent with some of the things that I've heard in the testimony about where you'd like to see the income levels in order to attract the types of amenities to the community. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm not saying, I don't know that you testified to that specifically, Mr. Bush, but I did hear it in some of the earlier testimony.
The point that I'm making is that they own their home. So
oh no, I get it.
Yeah, I'm just saying the point is, if you're locked in 40 years to rent, there's no wealth that you can't leave to your family.
So let me just state, because I'm Mr. Gray is probably, I'm well over my time. Okay. I agree with the point you're making about home ownership. So I don't think we disagree there. I just wanted to note though, because there's another component to this, right? It is the incomes in which the homeowners make, if part of the concern is trying to attract the types of retail that I heard at least one, maybe two witnesses talk about. So I just wanted to put that out there, not to in any way undermine the point that you're making about home ownership. And so, Mr. Gray, if you will allow a bit of an indulgence to just let Jacqueline Cannon at least make a really quick comment before you start your round. And I'll recognize that I'll give you a little bit of flexibility in your round too, because I went well over mine.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Jacqueline Cannon, if you want to make just a quick comment so I can turn to Councilmember Gray.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to just make the point that having been in the community for so long and having been privy to some of the opposition to building in that Square 5539 for a number of years now, I really feel strongly that the developer has done their due diligence to try to work with the community to address a lot of the concerns that we've had over the years. And in the absence of getting no development in that Square 5539, I really think that we should try to find a compromise in the middle somewhere. We've have asked for certain things that they've responded to. And if this tax abatement is what it takes to get, the kind of development that, well, not everybody wants to own a home. Not everybody can afford to own a home right now. And if the apartment complex with more focus on family options is available, I strongly feel that's something that we should consider.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Gray.
Very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony. And I don't have any reservations in saying, Mr. Chairman, that a number of the people who are testifying are my friends and my neighbors. So I fully appreciate, the concerns that they have at this stage. And we'll want to work with my friends and my neighbors to be able to find an answer to, issues that they raised. What I'd like to ask all the people who testified, Marla and Jacqueline Cannon and Mr. Bush and others, what have you done to try to find a way to find an approach that people would be more amenable to. So let me start with you. Ms. Jackson, and then we'll go to you, Ms. Cannon, and on to the other testifiers who given testimony at this hearing. So go right ahead. Thank you.
You're referring to me, Mia Jackson?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, and then we'll go around to some of the others.
And you want to know what I have done? I want to make sure I understand the question. What I've done specifically to find housing?
Yes.
I definitely looked quite thoroughly. And one of the reasons that I'm in support of this, because as much as I would love to own a home and do understand what it creates for wealth and long-term wealth and all of that, I also have a health condition right now that's very limiting. And so the difficulty for me going through the inclusionary zoning program, it took forever and nothing was coming up. And a lot of the properties were really, really not standard, not up to the, or what I wanted, where I wanted to live. And so finding a place that had the amenities as well as had the accessibility and services that I needed was very, very difficult. And so I landed in one of the properties here, which allowed me to do that. And I know a number of other people and families. I mentioned one friend who has 3 kids looking to get them into college. She's not looking to buy a home in the next 3 to 5 years. So a program like that would make it easier for her to stay in DC, have her family, and also have them in safe and comfortable housing. So those are things that are my concern.
Okay, thank you. Marla, you always are very vocal and active voice in many of the conversations that we have. So can I hear from you, and then we'll turn to Jacqueline thereafter.
Yes, Councilmember, thank you. We specifically, let me start with O Street Neighbors and Friends, have been in constant conversation with Jar Lynch Real Estate Partners and DuPont Park Civic Association and Penn Branch Civic Association to try and address these issues. We've agreed on some things, we've disagreed on other things, but we continue to, I come to both DuPont Park Civic Association meetings as well as Penn Branch Civic Association meetings to try and bridge the divide. We have our own O Street Neighbor meetings with Jar Lynch. We invite the community to come to those meetings. Our single member ANC commissioner had a community meeting in which we participated. So we're always trying to figure out a way. Yes, originally, the people on the other side of O Street felt that it would be disruptive to their property to have any development, but they've moved a long way since then. And we really thought that we had came up with a compromise where we were talking about home ownership and townhouses and those types of things. And Jar Lynch says they have not been able to secure the funding for that. I just want to say that in my capacity as a board member of a foundation that supports giving grants for down payments, what we find is in many cases, what people are paying in rent is what they could be paying in home ownership, just if they have the support around the down payments. In fact, it's less in many cases. So it creates cash flow, it creates economic wealth. And in the case of condos, it's, you know, it doesn't create the kind of things that single homeowners could be concerned about the maintenance. So, I mean, I just think that this is a way forward, and I hope we can continue the conversation.
Okay, thank you, Marla. I appreciate it very much. Jacqueline, let me hear from you, please.
Yes, sir.
Very active. You know, you worked with us on the work that we did on Pennsylvania Avenue and other efforts also. So I really I'd love to hear from you also.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. I understand that I am here in today's testimony as a resident of Penn Branch. You, of course, know that I also am chair of the Pennsylvania Avenue East Community Coalition. Yeah. And all I will say is that there's mixed emotions. There are some that we hear from that are adamant, like the O Street Neighbors and Friends, against, in this case, the tax abatement and building anything other than home ownership units on that property. And then there are others who are all in favor of the apartment, simply because of a lack of development on that site over the years. And just to use my personal situation as an example, I have a daughter who's a professional getting into the information technology industry, making a professional salary, but not at the level to be able to afford home ownership at this point, and is working through those home ownership programs that Ms. Laura mentioned earlier. And as an interim, being able to move out of the house and into an apartment would be a very attractive option, particularly in this community where she's grown up, where my granddaughter's in school, and would like to, stay pretty close to the community. So for us personally, that would certainly be a great option, to be right around the corner from home.
Mhm.
And there are others in the community that appreciate the access that we have in this community to downtown, and having a brand new affordable options for families to move into within the community would be a great option.
Okay.
At a reduced number of planned units in that development.
Okay, thank you very much, Jacqueline. I appreciate it. And I want to ask this as a final question to those who testified and provided answers to questions as well. And that is, have you all tried working with Jair Lynch and his compatriots? Have you all tried working with him on other solutions at this point, and how has that been responded to?
Well, if I may address that, yes, at least we have. We recently received presented Mr. Anthony Start a list of questions that we collected from our members of the PAECC Community Coalition, and we got a very thoughtful response back to those questions just yesterday, and I think we sent those up to you, Councilmember Gray, just perhaps last night or this morning, and we've asked for meetings, and I think they've been very responsive, at least to some of the requests from to meet with us and share and address our concerns. But
okay. Well, thank you, Jacqueline. I've already exhausted the amount of time that I had, so I appreciate the very thoughtful answers that you all have given. We will continue to try to work. We will hear from Jair Lynch today. We'll hear from him, and we'll look forward to hearing from you all as we continue to try to get answers that will be hopefully acceptable to you all. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. I want to thank the witnesses for their testimony here. I'm going to turn now to the developers who are going to testify. And I don't know how many of you all actually have testimony that you're seeking to provide today. Each of you? Okay. All right. You each going to have 3 minutes to provide your testimony. And I'm sure Councilmember Gray, as well as I, will have some questions for you following. So let me turn to Jair Lynch first, and then we'll be followed by the others. You're muted.
$5 in the COVID jar for me for being muted. Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffin. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you. Yeah.
All right. And members of the committee, Councilmember Gray, good to see you. My name is Jair Lynch, and I'm the president and CEO of Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners. We are a DC-based, locally owned real estate investment development company, more than 2 decades of experience creating extraordinary places. I'm joining you today to thank you, all the elected officials in the administration, for their incredible and invaluable work throughout this pandemic. and 2, to express my opinion for the need for a tax abatement for the residents of Penn Branch, which will bring much needed market rate middle income housing to Ward 7 that will set the course for an equitable and competitive city going forward. We have owned this shopping center since 2016, when the vacancy was above 50% after the previous developer lost the district as a tenant and failed to redevelop the site with condominiums and offices. We actually bought the property from the lender who defaulted on the developer and took the property back. In the past 5 years, we've met with the community over 30 times, slowly and meticulously working to improve the property and a shared vision for housing, office, and retail. We hosted art all night, holiday bazaars, and numerous other community events throughout that time, and we've enjoyed our spirited conversations with the community. We completed a map amendment with the support of the community where we self-regulated less density, increased setbacks, and lowered height in order to be a good neighbor. We even spent 2 years exploring desired options such as a grocery store, which eventually went to Skyland, and for sale options, as discussed earlier, townhomes, which due to the irregular shape of the property yielded less than 50% than what is typical in an urban site. Now we are ready to complete the project with housing that will address a vital need in the neighborhood and in the city as a whole. We are losing our middle class to the suburbs. We are mostly building for people making over $100,000 or less than $50,000. High-end housing in locations like Capitol Riverfront and Noma represents 75% of new leases in 2021. And deeply affordable housing is getting concentrated east of the river, deeply affordable, as indicated earlier. Did you know before Skyland, there's not been a single new construction market rate apartment community built east of the river in a generation? The fact that all the new construction occurred west of the river demonstrates the importance of this project and the need to provide a small tax abatement to support the construction of new housing. Housing, we hope, will bring workforce to Ward 7. We need market rate middle income housing throughout the city for people making between $50,000 and $100,000. We also need it at Penn Branch as the median income is $65,000 in the immediate vicinity. Our target customer will be the frontline workers who have to go to work and not telecommute, teachers, government workers, and healthcare professionals. Did you know the starting salary for most TC teachers are $58,000 and the maximum income for all affordable housing at 60% AMI is below $54,000? We have a gap. We wonder why less than 20% of fire and police officers live in the district. Less than 50% of district employees live in the district. We've created a path to the middle class, but when we leave folks to find new and clean and safe housing they can afford, that unfortunately often turns them to the suburbs. Our plan is to complete the vision at Penn Branch that started with another developer in the community in 2006 with office, retail, and housing. At the time, the country was looking to increase homeownership, but ended up in the Great Recession that hurt everyone. This neighborhood already has strong homeownership at 55%, but it has limited retail options. By providing rental housing, we'll be supporting the same retail that the community has sought after for years. For context, the U Street community only has 34% homeownership. Capitol Riverfront, 38% homeownership, vibrant retail options. You need a mix of renters at this location to keep the retail alive. With this tax abatement, we'll start design on a by-right project within the bounds of an approved map amendment, where we have on-site parking that's 83% above parking minimums, density that's 10% was allowable, and we will honor the good neighbor agreement. This proposal will attract residents at or around 80% AMI. And I'll just hit one more point. We're pleased to see the CFO's office understands there's gap financing necessary, but we want to address one point. The financing we secured for this project is from social impact dollars from a housing equity fund. This investor is unique and is extremely focused in partnering with cities to create housing up to 80% AMI, which for a family of 4 is $103,000. No projects in the district have this type of financing, and the investment metrics are well before other fully funded tax abatements. We were conservative in our request for district dollars, which will not be available until FY26, and we're dealing with supply chains. Yes.
I gave you a couple of minutes to go over. I want to ask something about what you're testifying on now, so I'll do that during my round. But I note there are 2 other folks who I want to get to, one of whom works with you. So I don't know if you want to defer any of your time there, but you'll have 3 minutes for Mark Hannon.
Yes, I'll be real quick. So Jair, if you wanted to finish your point.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Well, good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and Councilmember Gray. My name is Mark Hannon. I'm an investment associate with the Gyre Lynch Real Estate Partners. And today I'm joining to express my opinion for the need of the tax abatement for residents at Penn Branch, which will bring much needed market rate middle income housing to Ward 7 that will set the course for equitable and competitive city going forward. We have owned the shopping center, like Jair said, since 2016, and have spent over $15 million renovating the center and delivered a major gym, Anchor, and Planet Fitness, new community center organizations such as Blue Rock Care, and with that momentum, 5 new food options, which have been announced and will arrive this year, including Highlands Cafe and Miss Toya's Creole Cafe. We talked to many of the businesses at Penn Branch who are excited and supportive of this tax abatement. For instance, the CEO of Blue Rock Care, Mark Berg, stated in his written testimony, "We need to attract and retain talent that wants to work within the community. One thing that will help us is to have quality new housing for people making anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, which is 40% of our workforce. This project will help us attract and retain good people who want to help the community." Another testimony we have is from the program director of the Pennsylvania Ave East Main Street, Letitia Atkins. She stated in her written testimony, according to the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership neighborhood profiles, there are 5,000 people within a half-mile radius of Penn Branch, in comparison to 33,000 people within a half-mile radius of 14th and U Street. 100 new residents doesn't seem like a big change, but it will make a huge difference to the corridor's businesses by increasing residential density. And lastly, our final written testimony was from the owner of Sharks Fish and Chicken, stating, "We elected to come to the shops at Penn Branch because it is a nice center. We understand the beauty of the surrounding neighborhoods like Hillcrest, Fort DuPont, and others, but we were sober to the lack of customers compared to places like Capitol Riverfront and Noma. With a smaller number of customers, we must adjust our business model." Our recommendation is that this $500,000 abatement will allow us to build quality housing, but reduces the rent by $225 to $250 per unit per month to meet that middle income residents' housing budget needs. We ask for your support for this vital tool to help residents stay in the district and with quality new housing that they can afford. Thank you for your time today.
And I think we have one more witness on Dennis Perkins, who's a CEO of Civitas Commercial and Real Estate Services. Good afternoon to you. You have 3 minutes to testify. Again.
Good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie and members of the committee. My name is Dennis Perkins, and I'm the CEO of Civitas Commercial Real Estate Services. I'm joining you today to express my opinion for the need for tax abatement for the residences at Penn Branch, which will bring much needed market rate middle income housing to Ward 7. We started our business in 2012 and have been representing the ownership of the shops at Penn Branch since June of 2017. As the office leasing broker, we engage with businesses who are interested in the available office space on a regular basis. One of the more persistent discussions we've had to address is around attracting and retaining talent, especially outside of the downtown commercial business district. A major concern for businesses locating in the district is the availability of affordable and middle income housing for entry and middle management employees making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. High-end housing areas in locations like Capitol Riverfront and Noma don't cater to the full employee base of most employers. We often see businesses and nonprofits leasing space in other markets, such as the CBD, Maryland, and Virginia, because both current and potential employees want to live near their workplaces. Having a location that provides a town center environment enhances my firm's ability to attract quality office tenants who want to locate in other areas of the district and not just downtown. This environment will allow for employees to work and live in an area with a true neighborhood and a local feel for employers to attract and retain talent. I'm also a proud DC resident and intentionally do business with other DC residents, including residents of Ward 7, who have overwhelmingly reached the same conclusion. We need to invest in housing for all. My recommendation is for you to approve the 100% property tax abatement for 40 years, beginning with fiscal year 2026 through fiscal year 2067, capped at $500,000 per year indexed to increase 3% each tax year in order to maintain affordable rents for this missing middle resident with incomes of between 60 and 80% of AMI. The $500,000 abatement will create new quality housing with a small rent discount of $225 to $250 per unit per month to meet the middle income resident where they are financially. This project will not occur without the abatement, and that hurts the district as a whole when these businesses move to Maryland and Virginia. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you for your testimony. I want to thank each of the witnesses for the testimony here this afternoon. I want to start my questions before I turn to Councilmember Gray with Jair Lynch and ask, do you agree with the tax abatement financial analysis performed by the CFO? If not, why not?
We appreciate the CFO's analysis of this, and what and they indicated that there is a tax abatement that is needed here, and we think that is an important distinction about some of the other ones that they've talked about. But this has a very unique capital stack and investor base. This has a social impact investor that has particular ways in which they like to invest in projects, so that matters. But as you look at this versus other projects like the Center Leg Freeway and other market rate projects, this is well below the investor targets that the CFO has looked at throughout the city. So we feel, given those two components, that they would fully support the abatement at the full $500,000 level.
But when you say it's below the investor targets, if you could just explain what that means.
So the CFO utilizes data that comes from around the country to look at different investor profiles and investor levels for unlevered returns and yields on costs and things like that. That you would look at everything from savings accounts in your checking account all the way to stocks and bonds and the like. And this is well below what is the typical range for real estate. And it's because we're making that happen through a combination of the social impact investment as well as the tax abatement. And that combination is very unique. And so we think that if this was more prevalent, that the CFO's office would be more comfortable with setting the bar where it is and be utilizing this in the future if it can.
And I'm going to ask the CFO's office next about their top analysis. Is there anything else besides what you just mentioned that you think the CFO would benefit from in terms of their conclusion that a partial abatement is necessary, but not the full request? Any other information you want to provide them before I start asking them questions about their analysis that you think would be helpful?
No, but we are open to have further discussions with them post this hearing if necessary.
Okay. I want to get to just a couple of raise some of the concerns that the residents who testified earlier raised. But before I get to that, I want to ask about the retail. Are you fully leased up on the retail that's already been developed there?
Fully leased up on the retail, correct? Yes.
Okay, and tell me about some of the tenants you have on the retail side.
Sure. Yeah, it's right now it's a mix of 75% retail, 25% office, where before it was heavier on the retail and much lighter on the office, especially with the loss of that anchor tenant prior to us buying the site. As mentioned in my testimony, there's 5 new restaurants that are coming, and they are in that 75% number of retail that I mentioned. And then you still have Wells Fargo there as a long-term tenant, 7-Eleven. There's a long-term Taylor that's been in place, a nail shop. And then once CVS vacates and goes next door, that their space will be cut up into 3 additional spaces, one for Chipotle, another one for another restaurant space or fast food or food fast restaurant space, and then about 4,200 square feet of office.
Okay. And the concerns raised by some of the residents who live there is that they'd like to see home ownership on this site. They I think correctly note the importance of home ownership to building wealth, and it's not lost on me, and I'm sure as somebody who grew up in the District of Columbia as well, it's not lost on you how expensive the city is these days. You're in the business of real estate. How do you respond to that critique that while affordable housing is also a paramount concern of residents in the District of Columbia. The need for more home ownership opportunities for the missing middle is also important, and that this, if it doesn't incorporate that, could be a missed opportunity for that community along Pennsylvania Avenue and Branch Avenue in Ward 7.
I'll take that. I think the concerns of the community are very much legitimate. They are citywide concerns. And there is a need for additional home ownership as a means of financial growth. Dennis Perkins is a business owner. I'm a business owner. That also is another means. Investing in stock markets. We also know that African Americans invest less and less in 401ks and other wealth building modes. So I agree with the concept that we need to create more wealth building. I think there are multiple ways to get there. Some are going to involve real estate. Some are just going to involve financial literacy as a whole and doubling down where we can. As it relates to working with the community, we absolutely had a top 10 list of desired uses that went all the way down from housing all the way down to no senior housing, no charter school, and other things. And we've been working very diligently at chasing down those upper options that the community was looking after. We spent 2 years chasing a grocery store. We all know that grocery store ended up at Lidl. We also worked with several townhome builders who said the site is just irregular. The slope and the curve really does not create the yield that makes sense for townhomes, plus the green area ratio components that are important to the city are a conflict with the ability to get townhomes there. And then we all know that there's only a handful of projects that are condominium that are of this size. And we would typically be able to do about 300 units at this location. We are listening to the community. We are getting bigger units, and we are definitely pushing towards the lower end of what people are looking for. And so we think that there's been a lot of compromise, a lot of discussion, and a lot of respect on both sides. All the arguments have been we've been solid discussions, but we're at the point where we have an opportunity that we want to make sure that the community can get some development on that backlot.
So can we make sure we get written testimony from each of the three witnesses? You just said something that I caught, and I want to ask if you may be able to flesh that out a little bit more in writing for the committee about talking to townhome builders about the site and concerns that they had about the site. My time has expired in this round, but I would really urge that you, if you submit written testimony, that you also include testimony about what you just said and maybe expound on that a little bit. I want to turn to Councilmember Gray for a round.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Jair, I'll turn to you on this issue because it's germane to much of this discussion. How would you describe the need for this abatement at this stage, and make the case, because I want to hear also what some of your responses are about the responses of the community thus far. But let me hear from you, Jair, if you would, about what the need is for this debate, this abatement, and what will happen if it doesn't occur.
At about 180 units, this $500,000 abatement will create a $225 to $250 discount for each unit, for each family, every month for the next 40 years. Without that, the cost of building new construction would push those units out of what is market for the neighborhood and well above the median income at $65,000 per family in the immediate vicinity. So this becomes the natural next step to create something beyond deeply affordable housing, which is below $55,000 for a family of one. But it creates the next step. It creates the disposable income that helps those 5 new retailers that we've signed up to be able to survive and thrive. And so we have listened very carefully to the community. We understand homeownership has always been a goal. We took a very good run at it, but we think a middle income, market rate middle income housing is an appropriate next housing option that is consistent with the incomes that are in the neighborhood, even a little bit higher, and will support the amenity base that makes it a great, makes it continue to evolve into an even better neighborhood than it is today.
Well, you've done a lot of work in the community thus far. I know that for a fact. And I know what you've reached out and tried to do. You've heard the testimony today, very well stated on the part of those who testified, so many of whom are my neighbors, of course, my friends. How do you feel that what you have articulated meets the needs of the community at this stage, Jair?
Well, I think for one, the community has said that they have felt that deeply affordable housing has been concentrated east of the river. This is not deeply affordable housing. I've heard from the community that they want more retail, but they don't want to change the neighborhood's character, to move from 5,000 people within half a mile to something like U Street that's at 33,000. The delicate balance between those two is to have middle income, market rate middle income housing that actually supports the retail, as Dennis indicated, helps the organizations attract and retain talent. So I do think that is a compromise. And as you get to the bricks and sticks, we're shrinking the building, we're adding more parking, we're doing all the things that hopefully will make sure it's nestled in a community in a way. If 10% less density, 83% more parking, all of these things are direct reactions to the community and their concerns. We're even going out to look to do more family style units that actually will address the specific needs of people that are in the neighborhood. And we do think that as a rental community, people will have multiple ways in which they can build wealth, including buying in the neighborhood and creating that intergenerational play, which I think is very important. Having them first come here at 30 years old, working for an organization, convincing them to buy and stay, that's a great outcome. And this becomes the first stop towards that.
Tell me about the retail. You all mentioned it a little bit already, but tell me about the retail that is forthcoming to Penn Branch and how that's going to meet the needs of the community in Penn Branch, Jair.
I could hand it over to Mark. You could talk about Highlands and Ms. Toya's. That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Councilor Gray. What we're really looking forward to, like Jair said, was the two sit-down restaurants that are planning on coming. And these are, two sit-down restaurants that, aren't within miles of the community right now. So both are north of 4,000 square feet, full service sit-down restaurants, not just your fast food, not just your Chipotles and stuff like that. These are full service sit-down restaurants for folks that have been in the DC community for many years and want to expand east of the river and really bring their product, their service to folks of this community. So we're very excited about those. One is going to open within the next month or so, and the other one is planned for this summer. And that's just going to, obviously that's just a huge win for the community. But the concern of those specific business owners is the fact of how many customers do they really have to reach out to in the direct community. And again, 180 homes, 180 families doesn't seem like a big number, but it's huge when you consider it to what is currently there as a customer base along the Pennsylvania Ave corridor.
My time is just about up, Mr. Chairman, but the last question I'll ask is, can you speak to whether there are people who live in the community? I know Mr. Perkins lives in the community, but are there others who live in the community who will have a presence from a retail perspective in Penn Branch to facilitate expanding the market that we have there?
The owner of Highlands Cafe actually lives in Ward 7. His primary store is on 14th Street Heights neighborhood. But as he interacted with all of our community meetings, he did not come through a broker process. He actually came to one of our community meetings and said, I want to be part of this vision. I want to actually bring my product and my services to the community. And now we're very excited that he's going to be opening up later this spring. And so you have people who are from the community who are now part of the retail center, and we're looking for more people to actually have their businesses and their talent base be from the community as well. Because right now, most of them are coming from the surrounding suburbs.
My last question, and I'm done, then, Mr. Chairman. How have the folks that we heard from in the testimony today, how have they responded to the additional retail opportunities that you are bringing to Penn Branch?
Well, I think we've seen a steady uptick of memberships. That's a great way to check memberships at Planet
Fitness.
At Planet Fitness, and it's because people are getting used to coming to the center, and that was part of the mindset of we need to make sure that we're grabbing the people that are coming on Pennsylvania Avenue and some of the other corridors to stop, linger, and that's how we were able to build a momentum to recruit new office tenants as well as retail tenants. And so all of this momentum has to build on each other. And so we see that adding the residents to this with a social impact investor that's very unique is really important in order to make the entire town center work together.
Okay, and I did say that was my last question. I will make this my very last one. But have you worked with Letitia Atkins? She's working with Marshall Heights and the efforts that we've made to try to create more of a presence, more generate more activity around the presence, additional development around the Pennsylvania Avenue redevelopment, Jair?
Yes, I actually have. I'm on the board with her for the.
Okay.
So actually, she was one who provided written testimony in support of this tax abatement.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember Gray. Let me just ask really quickly if you could answer this as succinctly as possible, Mr. Lynch. Another concern that's been raised that I'd like for you to respond to on the record is traffic. And what, if anything, are you doing to mitigate some of the traffic concerns that residents have raised? And then the final question, if you could add to that, is what happens to this project if it doesn't get the abatement as requested?
Right. So I'll start with traffic. We are very much conscious about the traffic footprint of the property. We've tried to change some of the striping of the parking. We recognize that people were trying to use the parking lot as basically a de facto satellite parking to get in the city, into downtown. We are conscious of the fact that when we do development, we actually will complete a traffic study, and we will develop those things as part of the normal course of development and design once we have the ability to go forward with this tax abatement. So by all means, we'll be thinking about that. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about having additional parking on site to be able to facilitate and facilitate movement on the site, as well as minimize the spillover that will happen to the community. And then Chairman McDuffie, I don't like to end on a doomsday scenario, but to answer your question, without this abatement, we go to the next tier of things that were on the list of possibilities under this current zoning, and the community and ourselves are not that excited about it. Whether it's charter schools, whether it's senior housing, whether it's a big box retailer that will leave the surface parking lot open, all of these are not the high. We think the highest and best use that creates the best community and creates an extraordinary place. So we feel like it's very important for us to, while we looked for grocery, while we continue to leave optionality for grocery in the new building, while we looked at home ownership, we think this middle income housing is our best choice and creates certainty of execution in the coming years.
And just my staff had mentioned that somebody raised the question in the chat about healthy food options, and perhaps is a small grocer an option, even if you can't get one of the larger brands at the site. Have you considered it? Are there, is that something that could be viable option?
We think healthy food options are very important, and we are reserving a small retail component in the new building, and we are going to absolutely reach out to small format grocers to be part of the new building. So we are actively on the same page with that message.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to turn next to our government witness who's been with us for 2 earlier measures. This is her 3rd and final measure. If Nancy Fox and her team at the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, we're going to turn to you now for your testimony on this measure. And good afternoon to you again. I appreciate it. You can begin your testimony.
Good afternoon again, Chairman McDuffie and Councilmember Gray. I'd also like to acknowledge my 2 colleagues, Rick, colleagues in the Office of Finance and Treasury, who did a lot of work.
Ms. Fox, you might want to turn off your video again. I know it may work slightly better when you turn your video off. Okay, let's try that again because it was coming in a bit distorted.
Yeah, it's a little choppy. I was having difficulty hearing you, so let's try it this way. I said, also available to answer questions. So let's get into this. Applicant Lynch Real Estate Partners is proposing to develop 188 units of multifamily rental housing property. The property is an undeveloped or currently used in initial service part.
Yeah, Ms. Fox.
And ranch.
Ms. Fox, it's really difficult to hear your testimony, and I know you provided it in writing. I don't know if
I'm gonna turn this over to.
Yeah, I can.
Rick, if you can deliver it, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. Sorry, for the record, Rick Liu, Senior Policy Analyst from OCFO. So I'll read the testimony without, trying to remembering my name instead of Nancy Fox. Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Rick Liu. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst with the Office of Finance and Treasury and the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. Let me just turn this on. I'm pleased to testify for the OCFO on Bill 24-452. The Square 5539 Tax Abatement Act of 2021. This property is located in Ward 7 at the northeast corner of Pennsylvania and Branch Avenue with the address of 3200 Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast. The property is known for tax and assessment purposes as lots 835 and 840 in Square 5339. The applicant, Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners, is proposing to develop 188 units of multifamily rental housing on the property. The property is an undeveloped parcel that is currently used as additional surface parking for the shops at Penn Branch, which is a neighborhood commercial center owned by the applicant. Of the 188 units, about 19 of these are going to be affordable to households earning at or below the 60% of the median family income in fulfillment of the district's IZ inclusionary zoning requirements. And the remaining units, approximately 169 of them, will be affordable to households earning at or below 80% of MFI, or median family income. Maintaining the affordability levels of these 169 units is a requirement of the applicant's mezzanine or secondary debt, mezzanine financing. The project is expected to start construction by the end of calendar year 2022 and completed in 2024. This bill would provide an annual abatement amount capped at $500,000 for the first year, then escalated at 3% annually for a term of 40 years. This abatement is subject to the following conditions. 1, a 40-year recorded covenant stipulating that these units be affordable to households earning an average of 80% MFI, with none earning more than 100% MFI. And 2, a CBE utilization requirement of 35% during the construction and operation period. The affordability condition in the proposed legislation is less restrictive, actually, than what has been proposed for the property's development. Financial analysis. The OCFOs examined the impact of the applicant's ability to finance and deliver the 188 affordable units if the tax abatement is not granted using information provided by the applicant. This applicant, as they've mentioned, has obtained a unique mezzanine loan for this project that provides a favorable interest rate and reduces the amount of equity then needed to fund the project in return for the affordable housing restrictions mentioned previously. And the OCFO's analysis finds that this financing structure does not completely eliminate the financing gap for this project. Based on the analysis of the information provided, OCFO finds that a partial tax abatement is financially necessary for this project to move forward with the proposed financing. Given its estimated real property tax liability, a real property tax abatement annually of $362,000 for the first year, escalated by 3% annually over 40 years, would increase the project's cash flow and enhance the internal rate of return on the equity investment without over subsidizing the project. And so thank you for the opportunity to testify. This concludes my testimony, and we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for reading that, Mr. Liu. I do have some questions before I turn to Councilmember Gray. And I want to start with the TOF analysis. And one of the things that Mr. Lynch raised in his testimony, and I don't have it in writing, but I'm going to try to sort of remember some aspects of it to ask this question, but that he has a social equity investor, and those social impact dollars sort of change perhaps the ingredients that typically are evaluated for these types of TAFAs, tax abatements, and that perhaps there should have been a little bit more consideration by OCFO given that fact. How do you respond to that concern that Mr. Lynch raises in slightly disagreeing with the TOF analysis, in that he thinks the entire 500,000 is necessary and not the like 364,000?
362.
362? Yep, $362,000 escalated by 3% annually over the 40-year term. How do you respond to that?
Sure. So I can try, and then Nancy can also add some additional information. We always evaluate, OCFO evaluates all these applications, whichever ones come in, because he mentioned a couple other different projects, but we always evaluate them in their constituent parts. So the financing of a project always has different constituent parts. It's called a capital stack. Typically, the equity, the sponsor equity, is the one that requires the most return. The construction debt typically is the one that requires the least return or the least cost. And then the stuff in the middle called the mezzanine loan, or basically the bridge financing, often has the highest amount of cost of capital or return. Mm-hmm. So naturally, the more sort of equity you would have in a project, the more that what Jair is calling the blended return is going to be. So we never sort of look at these projects overall in terms of their overall, what the blended or unlevered return of the overall project, because we always look at the capital in their constituent parts. Nancy's been here a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. So, she might be able to answer this, but some of the projects that he's mentioned, we actually went back and looked and at their sort of individual sort of constituent parts. And for a number of them, their equity component was much larger, thereby, which is a reason why the overall unlevered or blended return is higher as well. In this particular case, the social impact investor has a pretty large portion of the overall capital stack, 35%. It's a very sort of favorable interest rate. And that's also because the social impact investor is putting affordability restrictions on the project. That cost of capital is only 3%, which covers, 35% of sort of the capital stack. And then you have another, construction loan that with today's interest rates is, I don't remember exactly what Jared had, but something in the 4% range. So what ultimately, it's a fairly small portion of sponsor equity, only about 5%, which we have actually treated the same as sponsor equity that we would treat generally for other types, which is a much higher return.
Right. That's really helpful. I want to just make sure I understand. Have you all specifically, have you encountered this type of financing with the social impact equity in your evaluations in the past?
Go ahead.
This is, I can chime in on that. This is the first time we've seen it in our office and evaluated it.
Okay. And I guess I'm trying to figure out how you're going to assess built projects like this one that is being proposed here. How's the Office of Tax and Revenue going to assess that the project like this one?
The way we have assessed it is we have the terms of the loan, we have the interest rate of that loan, we have the period. It's an interest only loan, there's a way that we sort of blend all the different sources of capital into the analysis. Each of them have different terms, each of them have different costs of capital and different return sort of thresholds. I would say for this particular analysis, we analyze those terms like we would with any other type of deal, where we look at, again, the constituent sort of sources of capital and debt, and overall, trying to deliver an adequate return for the
Let me be more specific in terms of the assessment. I'm talking about property taxes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's actually that was sort
of Basil, are you still on the call? Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm here. So generally speaking, for real property tax assessment, the property is assessed at estimated market value, which is based on what a willing buyer and willing seller would pay for the property. Now, if there are, for example, government-imposed restrictions on the property, such as affordability covenants or other limitations on the use of the property, those are taken into account in determining what the assessed value is. So that's the general approach that we use for assessments.
The abatement is for what, 500,000 annually?
Yeah, that's the base figure.
Right. And are the property taxes assessment likely to be more than the request for the abatement, the 500,000?
I don't think we can make that determination yet. The property hasn't even been constructed, so
right.
We don't really know.
We do have an estimate though, and Rick can speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the reasons for the discrepancy, perhaps, between what's in the bill and what we have estimated, the 362,000, is, our belief, frankly, that the taxes are going to increase slower than what the applicant, might be estimating themselves. The revenue, I would just say OCFO has taken the same assumptions that the applicant has given us in terms of the revenue and rents, the expenses, the valuation, the debt terms. The only thing that we've really had a difference on is, the tax growth and how that's going to be assessed, because that's something we have familiarity with at OCFO. With the applicant currently has taxes growing at a faster rate than revenue, which, we certainly understand why the revenue may be slower, because these are income restricted units. Historically, incomes for households, especially lower income households, have grown slower than the pace of inflation. And that is basically what governs the value of the property. So let's just say if a property is growing relatively slowly, the taxes will grow at that same rate and wouldn't grow faster. So that's part of the reason why.
Okay, and I just really quickly, let me ask, I may not need another round, but in reviewing tax abatements over the last several years, a couple of things that I think are unique in this specific time frame: the pandemic, and then some of the, I think, issues related to the pandemic, perhaps supply chain issues. Is that something that factors into your analysis on these types of projects? Does the analysis consider ongoing pandemic issues like supply chain issues?
This analysis used the information that was given to us by the applicant. Whatever development costs, if there are supply chain, increased costs involved in that, that was the information that we used.
Okay. So your assumptions are strictly based on the stuff that you got from them. So if they factored this into to the materials they provided, then you would have considered it based on whatever the information that the applicant provided. But it's not some consideration that you all made separate from the information you got from them.
That's correct.
Accurate. Okay. And in terms of like the timing of the abatement and district's investment, does the analysis that you all make consider the timing of the investment? I think it's in FY 2026, which is after the building is built.
2026 is the year where the building would stabilize and start generating revenue.
And so the TAF analysis considers that in determining that 362 is the right level as opposed to 500.
Beginning in 2026, the year that it generates revenue.
Got it. Okay.
Correct. And they have a holding period of 10 years is what's in the information they've given us. So that's what we use to model, an adequate return for a sponsor.
Okay, I appreciate it. I may have another question or two, but I'm going to turn to Councilman Gregg for a round.
Let me ask you, Rick, and your colleagues. Did you all receive sufficient amount of information? It's a very complex project, to say the least. Very intriguing, to say the least, also. But did you all receive a sufficient amount of information in order to be able to perform a thorough analysis that you can present to the council at this point?
Yes, we did.
There's not more questions that you had that you would love to ask at this point. I mean, we obviously want to know at this stage because we're vested with the responsibility of evaluating this project to know whether we should go forward or not. So is there nothing else that you should have gotten, you think? You heard a lot of questions raised by the community. You heard questions that were raised by us already in this process. So is there more information that you should have received, you think anyway, that would allow you to do an even more thorough job in evaluating this project?
Understood. Sure. I would just also say the scope of our analysis was to sort of determine, whether the tax abatement was sufficient and or if it would be over subsidizing the project, to meet the sort of intended objectives. And that's sort of strictly a financial issue, and to that end, yes, we got all the information, we needed, whether or not, that we could go through different alternatives and permutations of reducing units, increasing the size, what that might do, that was never, part of the scope of this analysis.
Okay. You heard a number of questions raised by the community in their testimony. Are there questions that were raised by the community in their testimony today, especially, that would further influence the kinds of questions that you would want to ask at this stage, Rick?
Not for economic development finance, no.
You're saying not for financing purposes. I guess that's what you're saying at this stage.
Yes, right. Not for financial. Yeah, for this. Yeah, what we've heard is many of them are policy related kind of comments. But yeah, no, I don't think it would change our analysis.
So there's nothing that you heard today that would have any influential impact on the decision-making that the CFO's office would make at this point. Is that a fair statement to make?
I would add that, but I would add that our analysis is specific to the pro forma development project provided.
I'm sorry, Nancy, could you repeat that, please?
I apologize. I have a lot of technical difficulties, but the analysis we've done is dependent upon the project, the pro forma, the project that Gerald Lynch put forward to us. 188 units of affordable rental housing.
And you believe, Nancy, so I'm not misinterpreting the information you're providing now. You believe what has been provided was sufficient for you all to be able to make a determination on whether this project should be supported or not?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, I think that's about it for me on this round of questions. We've had a thorough discussion, which I appreciate. We'll look forward to trying to determine how we go forward at this point. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Gray, and thank you to the witnesses from the Office of the Chief Financial Officer, as well as all the public witnesses who I thought provided some really important testimony about this measure. So we're gonna move to the next and final measure on the committee's agenda today, and that is Bill 24-466, the St. Elizabeth's East Parcel 13 Surplus Declaration and Disposition Approval Act of 2021. That measure was introduced on October 26, 2021 by Chairman Mendelson at the request of the mayor, referred to the committee on November 2nd, 2021. The bill declares as surplus and disposes of for private development Parcel 13 of the St. Elizabeth's East Campus. Parcel 13 is approximately 138,000 square feet of vacant land at 1100 Alabama Avenue Southeast in Ward 8. The St. Elizabeth's campus is a National Historic Landmark and was transferred to the district government by the federal government in 1987. As a result of the mayor declaring this property no longer needed for public purpose, this act would approve the disposition of Parcel 13 to Neighborhood Development Company, LLC, pursuant to DC Code 10-801 and subject to a 99-year ground lease. NDC, Neighborhood Development Company, the developer plans to construct approximately 21,000 square feet of retail and commercial space, in addition to approximately 421 residential units and 240 underground parking spaces. By law, at least 30% of the units must be affordable. And NDC must also sign a first source agreement with the district and use certified business enterprises for at least 35% of the project's contract volume and contribute 20% of the project's equity financing. I'm going to call on the public witnesses who have signed up with the committee to testify. I believe they're all associated with the development team. I'm not sure that everybody plans to testify or maybe just to answer questions, but I know I do see Adrian Washington, who's the CEO and founder of Neighborhood Development Company. And so I'm going to start with you. And good afternoon to you. You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready. Thanks for being here.
Okay. Thank you, and good afternoon, Chairman McDuffie, Councilmember Gray, if you're still here, and other members of the committee, and the many staff and committee members whose efforts have made today possible. My name, for the record, is Adrian Washington. I'm the CEO and founder of the Neighborhood Development Company, a district-based real estate development company. I'm here today to testify in support of B24-0466, the St. Elizabeth's East Parcel 13 Surplus Declaration and Disposition Approval Act of 2021, and of course, to answer your questions. I'm particularly delighted to speak to you as a lifelong DC resident, someone who grew up in Congress Heights, right near in the neighborhood that includes the project. I founded my company, Neighborhood Development Company, in 1999. The company to this day remains 100% minority owned 23 years later. As you may know, DemPed and ANC8C selected our proposal to develop Parcel 13 in late 2020. Our proposal was thoughtfully and purposely constructed with a talented and experienced team of district CBE firms, including Bonster Harrison as architect, GCS Siegel as general contractor, DeLon Hampton as civil engineer, to name a few. We've also partnered with the nonprofit A Wider Circle and the Black-owned food concept Half Smoke as anchor retail tenants. All of these firms, I believe they were here at one point, are available to testify today or to provide written testimony. NDC is fortunate to partner with the district to help revitalize a critical component of its far-reaching and comprehensive vision for the St. Elizabeth East Campus. Specifically, our responsibility is to deliver our 421-unit apartment building with approximately 21,000 square feet of ground floor retail. It's a vital housing solution to accommodate the physicians, nurses, technicians, security personnel, custodians, concession workers, and other workers, other jobs tied to the already active entertainment and sports arena right next door to parcel 13, and the hospital, St. Elizabeth Hospital, which, as you know, broke ground just recently. They are both our neighbors of parcel 13. Of particular importance to us and to the council and ANCHCs is a commitment to affordable housing. 30%, over 126 of the total apartments will be reserved for district residents in need of rent relief at the 30% and 50% AMI levels. These units will serve residents earning from $27,000 to $58,000 a year, resulting in rents ranging from $680 to $1,450 per month based on unit size. This deep affordability is designed to directly ease the district's critical housing shortage. This programming mix fits well with the campus's overall master plan, which has both larger units, townhouse units, homeownership opportunities, and rental opportunity. While the development process officially commences after disposition, we are excited the concept renderings demonstrate a color palette and materials that match with the historic aesthetic of St. Elizabeth, as well as blending in with the new sports arena. Our project team at NDC has driven the parcel decisions with valuable input from the Congress Heights community, often through the important work of ANCHC. Despite the entire project lifecycle having occurred during the pandemic, our team has attended and participated in virtual and in-person events, such many events. There are challenges on the site. We met with SMD Commissioner Powell, as well as many other Ward 8 Councilmember Trayon White staff. They connected us with the community, and so we're very proud of the extensive level of community commitment. And I still have a little bit of time, so I have got a few more remarks. We've committed over 15 projects with the district. Councilmember McDuffie and Councilmember Grant, I know you're very invested in the CBE process. We have an exemplary CBE contracting and first source compliance record across all of our projects. We believe in it completely. We believe in the overall ecosystem of CBEs and Black-owned developers and companies, and we've always involved them, and we always will. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for going over time, and I'm here to provide any answer any questions you or other committee members might have.
Thank you, Mr. Washington, for your testimony. I don't know that, I don't think we have the written testimony of any of the witnesses, and so I would encourage you all to provide your testimony in writing. I do have some questions. I don't know if Councilmember Gray is still with us or not, but I do have some questions that I would like to pose to you all, just to sort of flesh out the project a little bit more, and to ask about some of the decisions that were made around this project before we turn to the government witness. If I could, you mentioned that housing affordability in your statement, and that's really important to me, and I proudly legislated in this area. One of the bills I legislated was the Public Land Disposition Bill back in 2014 that requires a portion of housing that is developed on district-owned land for the purpose of multifamily housing of 10 units or more be set aside for affordable housing. Goes up to 30% when it's near the metro. That applies here. How does that 30% break down in terms of the size of the units in this development?
Okay. So this apartment building is designed as a mix of studios, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms. And so the affordability is spread evenly across those unit types.
Okay. And it's 1s and 2s across the board. Some people have asked about larger family units. Was that a decision made not to incorporate larger family units in this project? If so, why make that decision?
So yes, Council Member, as you know, we talked extensively with the community about that, and we've gone back and forth. One of the things that we view this project as is not just a standalone project, but as a part of overall campus master plan. And so as part of that master plan, there are units that are townhouse units. There are buildings that are all market rate. There are buildings that are all affordable. And so what we try to do is fit our unit mix as part of that overall campus plan. And so we thought in this building, our goal was to provide a maximum number of units. And so we thought just with the configuration, what was going on in other parts of the site, what would be necessary for market absorption, we thought the best mix of this building would be to focus on 1 and 2 bedrooms that would be designed for smaller families.
And perhaps your last response answers this question, but I'll pose it anyway. The proposal is solely rental, and there's no ownership in this proposal. And I raise it, and I don't know if you heard some of the earlier testimony from a different project, but I know there's a really strong interest in residents, particularly those who have rented and who are looking to own in the District of Columbia and don't want to leave in order to be able to purchase a home in the District of Columbia. But did you consider home ownership before deciding to propose this project? And what kind of considerations did you make around home ownership, if any?
Right. Okay, so thank you, Councilmember. Actually, yes, I did have the privilege of listening to the prior testimony about a different project, and I thought it raised a lot of interesting points. I mean, clearly communities want many things. They want retail that works, that serves the community. They want places for people who want to rent, because not everybody can afford to or actually wants to be a homeowner, but they also want home ownership. And we've provided many home ownership opportunities on other projects, in particular one working on one in Ward 8 right now that we hope to break ground on soon. We just completed one in Ward 7. So we're very aware of home ownership. And so going back to what I spoke about before, looking at the campus plan, and Ms. Owens, the head of the St. Elizabeth's effort, will testify to that. This project was designed with that mix in mind, that to have a large building that could support ground floor retail, that could support workers who wouldn't necessarily wanted to buy, and also other parts of the campus would support home ownership opportunities. So we thought it fit in well with the overall campus plan, and that's what we were trying to achieve.
If you don't mind me asking, the home ownership you just mentioned, you finishing a project in Ward 7, where's that located?
It's located in Minnesota and 27th Avenue Southeast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What kinds of subsidies are you using to complete this project?
So we will be requesting a subsidy from the Housing Production Trust Fund from the district.
Okay.
For the affordable units.
Got it. And do you anticipate any request for a property tax abatement of any sort?
Well, it was very interesting seeing the earlier testimony, but at this point, no, we believe that it can be done without a tax abatement.
Okay. And does this project meet the definition of transit-oriented development? It's something that I've heard some interest in as committee chair from neighbors and residents would see more transit-oriented development in the District of Columbia. Would this qualify as something as transit-oriented?
Absolutely. I mean, this site is, literally next door to the Anacostia Metro Station, not the Anacostia Metro Station, I'm sorry, the Congress Heights Metro Station. So it's ideal. It's a prime example of transit-oriented development.
Okay. And parking, how many parking spaces are going to be a part of this development? How many are required?
I believe, and perhaps Mr. Bontrick can answer that exact question on the spaces, but it certainly meets or exceeds the requirements of under zoning. So we will not be asking for any exceptions.
Okay. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the CBEs and just, if you've identified, obviously, some of the CB company, the firms that you're using on the team. I'd love to hear about that, whether on the construction side or even professional services side. It's a big priority for this committee. I've stressed it when these types of developments come before. the committee, while I've chaired at least. And so I'd love to give you an opportunity to talk about CBE involvement, whether on the equity side, on the participation in construction, what have you.
Okay. Absolutely. And council member, your track record on CBE participation is exemplary, and ours is as well. So we are the lead, we are the developer, we are the sole developer for the project. We're a CBE firm. Mr. Bonser's firm, our architect, is a CBE firm. Mr. Oliver's, the general contractor, CBE firm. Mr. Asefa, and I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, from Delon Hampton, they're a CBE firm. And so if you look at developer, general contractor, architect, the engineers on the company, those are like by far the biggest components. We're all CBEs. And so that's just at the top. But as we go down to the subcontracting level in terms of the attorneys, the general contracting subcontractors, everyone, we are all well-versed in CBEs. We'll bring them in. And so I think this particular project will be a case study for how you do CBE participation right in the district.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. In terms of job creation, what does it look like, construction and post-construction permanent?
Okay, so we are right now projecting 380 construction jobs and 46 permanent service and retail jobs.
All right, and then in terms of community support, have you generated community support from any ANCs, civic associations, or any other organizations in the community who have expressed support of your project?
Absolutely. We've had, despite the pandemic, we have done an exemplary effort of outreach to the community. Well, I obviously can't speak for people who are on this call. We do have support of ANCHC as well as the SMD for our district. We've done outreach in the broader Congress Heights community. I would note that the retail partners that we have recruited so far, a wider circle, is already well established in the neighborhood, has a great track record. Half Smoke is run by a young man that I know who has had great success in other parts of the district, and the community is very anxious for them to come here. So we've had extensive outreach both with the ANC, with the SMD, as well as other civic associations in the neighborhood.
Okay, and what's the sort of schedule, project schedule? Where are you at with talks with DEMPED? Just before I can transition to my government witnesses, is there any other details?
We've worked very well with DEMPED. We've already begun early work on the project. Obviously, we want to make sure that that our agreement with the district in terms of development and disposition is complete. But to answer your question directly, if we are successful in passing this legislation, we expect to break ground late in the following year.
Got it. Anything else you want to add to the record before I transition to Ms. Owens with DEMPED?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you each for being here. And again, if there's any written testimony, I would encourage you to provide that. We'd love to incorporate that into the record for the benefit of the committee members and the full council if it makes it out of committee. Next, we are going to turn to our final witness of the day, and that is Latrina Owens, Executive Director and a member of the team at the Deputy Mayor's Office for Planning and Economic Development. Good afternoon to you, Ms. Owens.
Good afternoon.
You can begin your testimony whenever you're ready.
Sure. Good afternoon, Chairperson McDuffie, members and staff of the Committee on Business and Economic Development. My name is Latrina Owens, and I serve as the Executive Director of the St. Elizabeth East Redevelopment in the Office of the Deputy Mayor of Planning and Economic Development. I'm here to testify in support of B24-0466, the St. Elizabeth East Parcel 13 Surplus Declaration and Disposition Approval Act of 2021. The approval of this act would authorize the mayor to declare as surplus the District of Columbia owned real property known as Parcel 13, located at 1100 Alabama Avenue Southeast, Washington, D.C., and known for taxation and assessment purposes as Lot 850 N square S-5868, as no longer required for public purposes, and approve its disposition. While the subject of today's hearing is the disposition of the property, my testimony will also touch on aspects of the declaration of the property as surplus. B24-0466 is also currently pending before the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I would like to thank you for holding this hearing and recognize the invaluable contributions of the community, particularly past and present members of ANC 8C, residents of Congress Heights, Ward 8, Councilmember Trayon White and his staff, and many other neighbors and community members who have been active in making the redevelopment of historic St. Elizabeth's East possible. Rich in economic promise, historic resources, and federal access, the campus is one of the few remaining large development opportunities in the nation's capital, an opportunity to transform 183 acres into a marketplace of ideas and commercialization. Less than 3 miles and just a few metro stops from the U.S. Capitol, St. Elizabeth's invites a mixed-use development that simultaneously serves nearby communities, nearby federal office tenants, and the local demand for retail, residential, and office uses. The parcel 13 property is unimproved land, which consists of one parcel totaling approximately 138,162 square feet of land. St. Elizabeth's is located at 2700 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue Southeast in the Congress Heights neighborhood of Washington, D.C., and is directly across the street from the historic St. Elizabeth's West Campus, the home of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Consolidated Headquarters. DMPED hosted a properly noticed community meeting about the proposed determination of the property as surplus on March 28, 2018 at the RISE Demonstration Center at St. Elizabeth's East. The meeting included a review of the master plan and time for the public to submit their comments about the surplus process. DMPED also attended the ANC 8C meeting on May 2nd, 2018 to address additional questions and present the development plan for the campus to the community members. DMPED attended the Congress Heights Community Association meeting on May 14th, 2018. The meeting included a presentation of the St. Elizabeth East plan for the surplus of parcel 13. Following the surplus hearing, the district completed a thorough competitive solicitation process to select a developer to develop the property. On June 29, 2019, DMPED hosted a pre-offer conference for members of the public interested in the solicitation. 38 individuals attended the conference. DMPED's presentation and names and contact information for the attendees at the pre-offer conference are also posted on the St. Elizabeth East website. To provide clarification, a disposition meeting was noticed in the DC Register on February 12th and a meeting held on March 4th, 2021 from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. 13 attendees were present for the public to hear the presentations from developers and make comments directly to the development teams. Due to the late notice, the disposition had to be sent to council as an act. Since the surplus hearing on February 7, 2022, with the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities, I gleaned that there is a concern by some that DMPED did not do adequate community outreach on the project. However, DMPED has been in the community over the past 2 years, with the most recent meeting being held on this past Thursday, February 17th, to walk the community through the actual development process in the Parcel 13 project. In addition to the meeting held on Thursdays, meetings were held on March 28th, 2018. DMPED held a surplus hearing for the property. June 29th, 2019, DMPED held a solicitation conference. May 12th, 2020, DMPED hosted a meeting with the St. Elizabeth East Advisory Board to update them on the Parcel 13 project. June 3rd, 2020, a neighborhood development company presented to the full ANC 8C meeting at their ANC meeting. On July 15, 2020, a neighborhood development company presented to ANC 8C Executive Committee. On December 20th, 2020, neighborhood development company presented at the Congress Heights CDC virtual holiday brunch. On March 4th, 2021, on October 7th, 2020, DMPED, the developer received support from ANC 8C. On March 4th, 2021, again, a late notice hearing was held and there were about 13 people in attendance. On October 29th, 2021, Neighborhood Development Company briefed ANC Single Member District Commissioner Tasha Powell. On December 6th, 2021, we NDC brief Council Member Robert White Jr. and his staff. On December 6th, Councilmember Trayon White and his staff was briefed. On December 11th, we also held a Destination Congress Heights holiday event where NDC hosted a booth for the community to respond to any questions. On January 11th, 2022, we also briefed your office, Councilmember McDuffie. And then on January 20th, 2022, we also updated the executive ANC 8C community. Community members have also sent letters of support to your office and with a copy to ANC 8C. On May 11, 2020, DMPED convened a review panel consisting of representatives from DMPED's real estate team, the Office of Planning, and Department of General Services. The selection panel was presented with development proposals, given selection criteria, and discussed the merits and drawbacks of each. In June 2020, the selection panel unanimously recommended the Neighborhood Development Company proposal as Parcel 13 developer. On November 20th, the district announced the selection of NDC team and the district's development partner of Parcel 13 development on St. Elizabeth's East. The RFP included the following community focus requirements: to maximize CBE participation, to ensure distinct and unique architectural design quality that is consistent with the 2012 master plan, transit-oriented development that reflects the project's proximity to the Congress Heights Metro, the creation of direct access and sight lines to the entertainment and sports arena from the Congress Heights Metro, a mix of uses that are consistent with the allowable land uses outlined in the 2012 master plan, compatible with the existing entertainment and sports arena, and to leverage surrounding neighborhood development and serve the adjacent communities. Letters of intent from potential commercial tenants, and include plans for social and economic benefits to the community, including employment, training, personal development, retail, and food access. The development team includes 4 certified business enterprises: NDC, Bonstra Harrison, GCS Siegel, and MG Capital. The developer also included DeLon Hampton, SK&A Structural Engineers on their design team, and a letter of intent from Half Smoke in their proposal. The local businesses and CBE tenant partners will enhance the development program and provide successful, attractive tenants to the campus. The proposed development of the property follows the guidance of the 2012 master plan, which envisions the creation of the 13th Street sector development and St. Elizabeth East Campus by providing additional mixed-use commercial and residential development, and leverages the ongoing public and private investments in the neighborhood as a mixed-use destination. Consistent with these goals, Parcel 13 was identified because of its ability to achieve additional sense of place in the community, leverage activities of the ESA, and establish additional tenant and increase activity at St. Elizabeth's East to spur future development phases, most particularly. Specifically, the proposed Parcel 13 offers proximity to the Congress Heights Metro Station, space allocated for workforce development, programming, and local residents, new construction that creates 421 mixed income while offering affordable dwelling units to 126 residents, ground up development pads for potential retail uses in walking distance from the Congress Heights Metro, and the opportunity to take full advantage of the low-grade parking and serve campus activities. Regarding tax revenue, Parcel 13 is anticipated to generate approximately $15.5 million in permanent tax revenues over 30 years, inclusive of real property taxes, sales and use taxes, and other business-related taxes, and is anticipated that over 381 temporary jobs through construction period and over 69 permanent jobs upon completion. DMPED is proud to be moving this exciting project forward, activating currently underutilized space in the Congress Heights neighborhood, and bringing vital resources of housing, additional tax revenue, and new jobs to the district. Thank you for your time and consideration of the legislation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Owens. Despite how comprehensive it is, I still have a few questions for you. I know some of them were likely answered in your testimony, but I'd like to make sure that the record is complete by asking some of these questions and getting an answer on the record. If you could, as succinctly as possible, I think some members of the public generally like to know, when we are disposing of public land, why it's in their best interest. So why is this a proposed disposition in the district's best interest, in brief?
So this proposed disposition is in our best interest. As you know, St. Elizabeth East was given to the district in 1987. So over 30 years ago. We've had a master plan since 2012, and now we are finally getting this plan, in place and starting to put in things that were outlined in the plan. And that's been at least 10 years ago. The area that St. Elizabeth East is located in Congress Heights, the Congress Heights neighborhood east of the river. And this land has been underdeveloped, underutilized, and development has pretty much been minimal in this area over this time period. So there is a need for affordable housing opportunities. There's a need for additional retail amenities. There's a need to offer, as you know, we broke ground on the new hospital, health equity, but these are things that are needed in this community. And the need is now.
Sure. Talk about some of the economic factors that your office considered in proposing the disposition of this property to the developer.
So some of the economic factors are, again, the affordable housing needs, again, the need for additional retail amenities. As you know, from just chairing this committee, that retailers do not come until the people are brought to the campus. We recently opened the 252 units of housing at the residences, with 202 of those units being affordable. We've recently closed on the parcel 15, which will have interim retail, incubate the 8, which has started to bring retailers, but in the permanent development, that will be an additional 288 units, commercial building and a potential hotel. And on parcel 16, we have the new 20,000 square foot DC Public Library coming. So what it does is it fills in all of the areas that is closest to the Congress Heights Metro, creating what we just talked about, the transit-oriented development. And parcel 13 is the last space near the Congress Heights Metro.
All right, appreciate that response. And then, 10801, the section of the code requires that these sorts of dispositions be accompanied by an appraisal. Talk about the appraisal, who was conducted by, and how much the appraisal valued this property.
So the appraisal is valued pretty much at zero. This is a very challenging site to develop on. It backs up into a ravine. And so what will have to happen is that the land area will need to be created before the housing can be developed. As you know, it's noted that there is a small wetland that goes through that area that will work with the DOEE when doing that work. But Newmark, Knight, and Frank completed this appraisal, as they have with others at St. Elizabeth. So they're familiar with the terrain.
Okay, and it might be helpful just for the record, and this comes up fairly frequently in disposition hearings such as this one. And I'll note, as you referenced, this was sent down as a bill rather than the typical a resolution, surplus and disposition resolutions. And we're not doing a joint hearing as my colleague and I, Robert White, have done in the past, but $1 valuations really tend to give pause to the council, but in particular the public. When you hear that any land that the district owns is valued at simply $1, I think it begs the question, why? Because people who are looking at values in the District of Columbia, trying to rent or buy a home understand just how expensive it is to live here. And so how could an appraisal reach a valuation of $1 for this land?
So with all the things that will need to be done, okay, to create the additional fill to be able to build on the land, also the cleanup that will need to occur with the soil, the current soil conditions on which is most of the property at St. Elizabeth's. And also, as you know, with all the covenants that the district requires, it devalues the amount of the property. So it, with the affordable housing requirements and some of the things that we have in our agreements, it does devalue that land. And it kind of, if it was worth something, okay, which I think this project is mainly creating value for this land, it would go back in to help subsidize some of the some of the delta that's going to happen with some of the cleanup, some of the fill. Again, they'll apply for HPTF to offset some of the affordable housing, but this is an opportunity zone. So most of the money that they're bringing to this project is money that they're raising.
And in terms of the disposition, is this fee simple or is this a lease?
A lease.
Okay, how long is the ground lease?
99 years.
Okay. And how much is the annual payment?
So it'll be $99 over the 99 years.
How much in annual real estate taxes do you anticipate this project is going to generate?
So about 56.5 with real estate, business taxes, sales taxes. That's what our evaluation came back as.
Got it. And I think you may have said thousands, but I'm certain.
Millions.
Millions. Got
Millions.
It. Okay. I asked the developer about jobs, and you've referenced the value of the job creation component of this development. I want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that, and if there's anything particular that is being done to maximize the opportunities for people who live around the development site. I would love to hear that as well, without going into too much detail. And if Wardy Councilmember was here, and I know I've heard from him frequently, we should be maximizing every opportunity as a city to build people up as we are trying to build up buildings in communities that frequently face challenges. And this is one of those communities that I think they'd like to see more positive development, but they also like to see more of their residents get opportunities both to work and be employed during construction, post-construction, as well as some of the small businesses that are in that neighborhood.
Well, thank you for your question. I do disagree with you that we do need to definitely make sure that with all this development going on, that people in Ward 8 are working. I think most of the jobs within Parcel 13 will be, the permanent jobs will be, of course, in the retail space or the ground floor retail, and probably like building maintenance and things like that. As far as the temporary construction jobs, we'll look to do things like we've done. So as you know, like right now, we have Whitman Walker under construction. We have the townhomes at St. Elizabeth's under construction. We completed construction on the 801 East Men's Shelter, where we had 7 gentlemen who lived in the shelter actually get jobs on the site. They have since been, they're certified electricians. They moved on with those contractors to other jobs. And we look at doing things like that around the entire campus, definitely the hospital. I think it kind of helps that a lot of our developments are in partnership with CBEs. And I say this because they understand that when you put the community to work, and that when you build capacity with other small businesses, that those are things that we like to see. Why? Because they too were a very small CBE before they built capacity to be able to even bid on a project like St. Elizabeth, like Parcel 13.
Okay. I again asked this of the development team, but I'd love to hear your response to it. Given the need in certain parts of the city for larger family size units, this project specifically ranges up to 2 bedrooms, but nothing beyond that. Why is that a project that is appropriate for this site in your estimation?
So I will say like redeveloping St. Elizabeth's is similar to just like a little, I always say like a small city. And then that you have to have a mix of housing and uses that is for everyone. So all family sizes. In the residences of St. Elizabeth's, we have 86 3-bedrooms. We also will have additional 3-bedroom units, family size units on parcel 15. So we do have to be able to address the needs of all different mixes of families.
Okay. Talk a little bit about the community engagement. I noticed that the oral testimony provided was different from the written testimony that we received. So if you could provide us with the updated written testimony.
I will do that. I think we updated it. I updated it a little this morning just to include the actual meetings in the testimony.
That was helpful because it sort of, I had a lot of questions about community meetings and community engagement and the requirements of disposition hearing under 10801. You addressed that in your oral testimony. And so I think it's going to be important to have that written testimony for the record. So if you could follow up with an email to the committee staff with that updated written testimony, I would appreciate that. But talk a little bit about the community engagement. You don't have to summarize as much as you provided in your lengthy testimony, but if you could, for anybody who had concerns about community engagement, how were the ANCs involved and any other civic leaders and residents involved in this process?
So the ANC was involved. We made presentations to them several times. They actually provided a letter of support on October 7, 2020 in support of this project and in the end of this team. As you know, they always say Latrina for the people, but I'm always out in Ward 8. So whenever we have a fitness event, I have tables set up so that people can provide feedback. So the feedback loop is always, members can always provide feedback on any of the projects. In addition to that, I did say that some people have sent letters of support because they do want to love the momentum that's happening. Like I said, they've been waiting for over 30 years since the master plan for the past 10 years. So they are very involved with all of our projects at St. Elizabeth's. But again, we've had about 15 meetings and we've been in the community for 2 years. Our outreach does not stop here with today's hearing. We will continue to outreach as we design the building, the final building to be built at St. Elizabeth's, because as you know, the Commission of Fine Arts and the Historic Preservation Committee, they also require community outreach and support for just the design as well. So it doesn't stop today.
Okay, and then if you could, briefly, just for the record, there is a statutorily required disposition hearing for projects like this. How do you respond to any criticism or questions about whether you actually held the disposition hearing as required by 10801 B2?
Okay, so I'm going for the record, I'm just going to go back to my testimony.
Okay.
I just want to read that portion of it. So to provide clarification, a disposition meeting was noticed in the DC Register on February 12, 2021. A meeting was held on March 4th, 2021 from 6:30 to 8:30, where we had about 13 people in attendance to hear the presentations and to directly provide feedback. However, the notice was done, but it was done late. And in accordance with the law, the disposition has to be sent to the council as an act, and that is what was done. So since the surplus hearing on February 7th, 2022, with the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities, I've gleaned that there is a concern by some that DMPED did not do adequate community outreach. But as I've stated today, that we are always in the community. We have at least documented, and again, I will send in my revised testimony, at least 10 meetings over the past year and a half that we have gone to the community with this project, and also have a letter of support from ANCAC.
And in terms of if this measure as well as the measure in the Committee on Facilities and Government Operation are passed in committee and make it to the full council and are passed, what's the next steps? What does project schedule look like for this project?
So I think if you go back and notice I'm really not even sure what happens with that. I guess if you notice
I'm just talking about if this is passed, if we passed it, what happens next in terms of moving this project forward?
So we will move forward with the full design. I mean, actually, we'll sign the land disposition agreement with the developer. We'll move forward with the design. We'll look at getting on the calendar in the early fall with the design in front of CFA and historic preservation, so that we can move forward. Again, as he said, they would like to break ground in the summer of 2023, and that's what we'll push to do so.
Okay, is there anything else you would like to add to the record before we adjourn this hearing, Ms. Owens?
So I just want to say, before I just add to the record, again, I want to just say thank you to the community members of Congress Heights, and also to the residents who attended our meeting on last Thursday, and to all of you who have submitted letters of support in support of this project. Your work does not go unnoticed, and we greatly appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony here. If there's any follow-up on the committee, we'll be sure to get that to you, and we will look out for your email that includes your updated written testimony.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone, actually, who took the time today to testify before the committee on the multiple measures that we considered. For those who would like to submit remarks, the public record for this measure, for these measures, closes at 5 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, February 23rd. This marks the end of today's public hearing. The committee will convene again at 9:00 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, February 23rd, for a performance oversight hearing on the following agencies: the Public Service Commission, the Office of People's Counsel, the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration, the Office of Nightlife and Culture. Interested public witnesses have until 5 p.m. today to register to testify at that hearing. The time is now 4:01 p.m. and this public hearing is adjourned. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to staff and everybody else who made today possible.